He's immensely seductive. Quite sure he's right. Obsessionally neurotic. Pretty dangerous, in fact.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories.
Do you mean you doubt your powers to convince him?
Say it! Say it!
All right, I'll say it.
Worse than that. What I'm afraid of is his power to convince me.
We're talking about putting a manifestly irresponsible man on national television.
Sweetheart, be reasonable.
What? This is the end game.
I mean, as long as you're reasonable. You have to be reasonable. We have to be reasonable. Thank you very much.
You don't know that I'm going to even do it. You don't know. I may do it. I may not do it. I mean, nobody knows what I'm going to do.
Chris, please explain to the normie we need to finish what we've started.
All right, everybody. I don't know where my normal graphic was. I have no idea what was going on there. It is Tuesday, August 5th, 2025, the 198th day of the Golden Age. I'm your moderator, Chris Paul. Let's be reasonable. So it's been a week since last we talked, so that's a lot to catch up on. And sometimes it's overwhelming to have to catch up on that much stuff. And I know that with the amount of information you all take in, you're very familiar with that sort of feeling. But the other good thing about it is that by the time you really have to put your thoughts out, I mean, from my perspective, you have multiple steps of so many individual narratives that you can actually tell a fuller story and make more sense of it. And so sometimes I really value that time difference. I was on the road for many days. I listened to a great podcast by a man named Dr. Zachary Porcu, Porcu, and he's got a Substack, but it's called The Roots of Everything. And I don't know if the guy, I haven't looked into his background, but I think he mentions at one point that he did his doctoral thesis on part of what he was discussing. And he's very, very cleanly well presented. It seems like he's probably spent his career being a college professor talking about religion and philosophy. And he spends a lot of time in that show talking about where everything is headed without really taking much of a political perspective. You can tell he's conservative. I believe he's an Orthodox Christian, and he calls himself a historian. So he's spent a lot of time with this material. I cannot recommend it highly enough. Okay. I was on a very long road trip, and for almost the entire time, it was that podcast on the car radio. I should say most of the time, like the full time on the way back, and then an hour or two on the way out. But I think I got through almost the entire show that he has presented, which is, 5 months of shows, one every week. He divides them into these little mini series like secularism in the state. He has one on technology. They're just all excellent. And I think it is a good basis on which to think about all these issues. And again, I couldn't recommend it more highly. So with that said, let's get into what I want to talk about today. Last night, I had the pleasure of having dinner with an old friend of mine who I see very rarely at this point. It was the sort of person that I used to see multiple times a week when I was back in Hollywood. And we have both obviously since left there, and our lives have changed a great deal. And so I got to have dinner with him last night. And, he was kind of talking about some of the political stuff and where people from Hollywood were at with all of that, people that were part of the friend group that I was in back then, and kind of how everybody's doing, the speed at which they're moving and the rest of it. And we were talking about how difficult it is to discern between these levels of story that everyone's getting caught up in and what is actually true and important on that base layer, on that reality prime layer. Once you've stripped away all of the other nonsense, the fakery, the falseness, the immorality, you got to dig down through those layers to get to that reality prime layer. And because the purpose of the brainwashing and the info op that's been taking place over the course of our lives, certainly for the last 60, 70 years. I mean, it's undeniable at that point, once the 60s started happening. I would suggest it's probably gone way back beyond that with the fake news and the rest of it. But we have to be able to distinguish between that stuff and what is real and actionable and important about the information coming in. And I'm not suggesting that I get that right all the time. Okay, we've certainly over the last 5 years chased some stories that discernment now would have convinced us then not to have chased those stories down, to understand, oh, this is an info op from the good guys rather than an info op from the bad guys. And just based on that alone, kind of like when we are subject to an info op from our side, it's much more likely that we will accept the story at face value because we know it's a refutation of the other side's story. And that may well be true. And that might be the reason for the story's existence within the info war, but it doesn't make the story true. And that distinction is a really difficult one to make. The story is told for a certain reason. And that certain reason is to invert our natural understanding, our definitional understanding of what it is we are dealing with. They will take a word or a concept and completely overturn it and make it backwards. We've talked about inversion before. But the key is that in every element and presupposition of a given concept, you can judge whether or not you have to be able to discern whether or not that element of the concept is representative of what we are being told it represents. Okay. So the concept should work in full. And from authority, we are convinced that we need to accept these concepts in full and that all the parts of the concept are therefore also true. And none of that has to be proven in any way. And they don't need to prove it. They don't want to prove it. They can't prove it, most importantly, because the purpose, again, is to invert the world as we understand it. Okay? So you are going to be adding falseness at every layer that anyone could ever dig down to. And people who want to get closer to the truth will dig down through those layers, trying to really find out what's there on the bottom. And every time a new question is asked that hasn't been answered by the regime, by the authoritative source, a new answer will just be created. They don't want there to be any problems in the story. So as you pick apart the elements and falsify one, falsify another, something new will pop up in its place to keep people attached to the general conception. Okay, because otherwise things begin to come unwound. And that presents a real threat for the regime side in a narrative war. And I think it's critically important to be able, when you get down to those elements, not only understanding that big stories might be fake news, but then knowing how exactly the reality has been inverted and down how many lines has it been inverted so that we can think about what the opposites are. Okay, well, this was inverted. Let me try to think of a good example. So, gosh, okay, here's one. The point of life might well be pursuing the grace of God, or loving one another, loving God, loving the way you go about your life, just presenting love all the time. Those could be the meanings of life. And our society has been conditioned to believe that the meaning of life is wealth, status, and power. It's everything in the material world. Having the most of everything means you have won the competition and are therefore the best. And your self-worth is then a factor of how readily you're able to do that. And so there's a lot of things that you have to understand and accept to be able to get on board with that. And some things you have to deny. You have to deny the existence of God, or ultimately a higher purpose, an objective morality, and something that you can align with and serve, and allow that to make your decisions rather than pursuing your worldly goals in spite of those moral commands. So the purpose of life becomes inverted from the most internal, the most spiritually oriented, to the most external and the least spiritually oriented. And wide swaths of our society have taken that on. So that is a complete inversion of what the purpose was. Okay. If the purpose is God and love, and you end up with no God and materialism, something's gone drastically wrong. Okay. How is it possible to do that? Because it's not the natural state. It just isn't the natural state. You can examine everything to the bottom and come to find out that a spiritual life and moral goodness and the existence of God are the natural state of things. Okay. And I reached that point through extreme skepticism and coming to understand just how much of this realm and this domain was based on fakery and lies. All right. So when you're able to understand the inversion, okay, you can know the thing and its opposite. And both of them map onto reality. One does because it's natural, and the other does because it's engineered so well and given to you with an incentive and punishment structure that suitably maps onto reality enough to not make people reject it based on the incentive and punishment structure. Okay? So being able to tell the thing and its opposite apart, which one is good, which one is evil, right? Good twin, evil twin. That's like the whole thing. Okay? Those are the sorts of judgments through which we build our lives, unless we are just attempting to climb the rungs of the ladder within the party of false decorum, or attempting to outcompete everyone in the material reality. What do we have? So I was thinking about all this last night, talking to my friend, and I think I inadvertently called it a taste test, right? You got like Coke and Pepsi put out in front of you, and RC Cola, and I don't know what other colas there are anymore, but they're out in front of you. Can you tell which one's Coke? Can you tell which one is Pepsi? Which one wins out of these two? Okay, we've talked about good twin, evil twin forever. The good twin has all the good qualities. The evil twin has all the evil qualities, but they are perceptively indistinguishable. And so it presents a real problem. You have to have something much more foundational by which to judge these two things. And again, you can see the same divergence. The people with God who have faith and reject falseness from this false reality, they're going to end up on a different side than the people who are just enjoying everything and going along with it because they think that everyone is going along with it. 1 second. So the idea of the taste test is then to determine what it is you're actually dealing with. And when we can figure out which one is the false one, we can't get truth just from assuming it's opposite. but it's a pretty good estimation. And I think that we have employed this very strategy to some success over the last few years. And I think it is still leading in that direction. But it's supremely important. That's what the whole game is, telling these two nearly indistinguishable things apart, because they both do map onto reality. And if you assume a bunch of things about that practical worldly reality, well, then their story makes an awful lot of sense. And again, it cues on the incentives you desire, the punishments you fear, and it tailors itself to that, so that you will be more inclined to choose the worldly over, to choose the falsehood, I should say, over the truth. And worldly versus godly is a proper distinction there as well. I wrote this last night, and I think that I'm trying to get, John and I talked about this a little bit on Saturday's Devolution Power Hour, and I'm sorry it was a short one. I was out of town, and I didn't have internet till 5 p.m. We thought we were going to be able to get a longer episode in, and then I had something in the evening, so I couldn't go longer than that. But what were we saying? Oh, the reality show bit that we talked about, because, you know, I occasionally refer to this whole thing as a soap opera. I think it's more appropriate, and I've been referring to it as a reality show for years too, and I've kind of just never distinguished them, I don't think, properly, or chosen one over the other, maybe I should say. I think that the reality show aspect is more accurate, because the reality show format already encompasses the soap opera qualities that I was referencing when I would call it a soap opera. The drama, the contrived situations, the flimsiness of the visual portrayal. Like, it's impossible watching a soap opera to think, oh, this is a high value production. You know, they are all on sets in studios. None of the houses are real. It's a very old style of television that you should be able to see immediately what it looks like and then know what you're going to get. Okay, so you're going to get all the drama, the contrived situations, the repetition of storylines. All right, all of that happens in the soap opera, but it also happens in the reality shows. Oh, now she's fallen in love. Now she's getting married. Now the marriage is on the rocks. Now they're breaking up. Rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. Choose a different character. Put her through that cycle. Go back to the other character. Put her through that cycle again, because enough time has passed in the minds of the audience between since the last time we went through that cycle. So all those elements of the soap opera also exist on the reality show. And I think that the reality show is more all-encompassing and more explanatory. And what we talked about the other night in terms of the reality show was the level of scriptedness of what it is we're watching. And there is the pure, just you're watching a movie, everything is completely under control. This is all a grand story arc, and you just have to sit back and relax, focus on something else, whatever. Okay? Maybe it's that. Maybe it's always scripted from each side and you're just watching a movie. But and if you see the actors repeating lines that have been given to them, okay, movie, that's very, very scripted. But I think that there's kind of a different version of scriptedness that is worth considering and understanding, because I think that that's what's going on in the politics, okay? So when you're watching a movie, you know that there is a screenwriter who has written out this whole script, and then a director goes and films it with his cameraman and the whole crew, and then an editor puts it all together in the perfect order, and then it gets put out, okay? And you got producers behind the scenes and whatever. In that film, you know that the actors are saying what was on the script. Same thing with television broadly. In movies, there is often improv, and in television, much less so, but some television shows are strictly improv comedy sketches, And those are actually more of an approximation of the reality show style thing than any of the rest of it. And we don't think of it as a reality show because it's people playing characters that aren't themselves, right? And you could think of Curb Your Enthusiasm, for instance. I don't know if you've seen that before. But Larry David plays Larry David, quote unquote. And then he has a cast of popular characters who act as the improv partners of Larry David throughout. And so they are often just setting up scenarios, and then there's improv involved. And I'm not saying it's never scripted. It is often scripted in great part, but there are those improv moments too. And improv moments playing a character are that's exactly what reality show actors do. And we don't think of them as actors. We just think of these people are playing themselves. No, they're not. They're playing a heightened version of some of their character in real life. Okay. And then often the reality show character, the TV character, the real person becomes that character over time. It's very strange. But in reality shows, there are still people setting everything up. It's not real. It's not just a camera following someone around in a voyeuristic way where they don't even know you're there. They're acting totally naturally, and that's what you see on screen. That ain't it. People create the scenarios and the situations, and sometimes the actors on the reality shows are involved with the creation of those situations to make sure that this is something that will be natural and feel natural, come off to the audience as authentic, etc. But the situations are prearranged, and the dynamic of the conversation can be prearranged as well. And then it's just two people acting as themselves, improving the lines that they are supposed to read. Okay. And I think that our politics is like that. I think that, and I've said this a million times on this podcast. I said it the other night on DPH, but I just totally lost track of what I was going to say. So crazy. It's been a long 6 days. Yes, the reality show. Yes. Okay. So the representatives that we believe represent the people, we vote for them in real elections. They are properly elected, properly certified, and then properly inaugurated into office. And we believe that they are going to Washington, D.C. or to the state capitol or whatever to represent our interests, and that they are going to be, they're going to listen to what our interests are first and foremost, rather than just coming with an agenda of their own. The agenda should be to serve the people. But that's not what they do. They are actually there as unelected through fraudulent elections, usurpers, serving the global regime and the Uniparty in America. And the service they perform for those bodies is marketing the global regime's agenda to the American people, to their own constituents, to the people they're supposed to be listening to and representing. It has been totally inverted. It has been turned around into, they are now telling us what to think and what we must accept for whatever justification they think best represents their character and will be most convincing, or at least, if it's not convincing, it'll give them an out that some others who are on that path don't have. So rather than representing the people to the regime, they're representing the regime to the people. And when you understand that, you understand that their actions in important moments are going to be controlled by the regime they're serving. They're going to be directed to act in one way or another. And at that point, it's up to them to figure out how to communicate to their constituents that what they're doing is still a good thing. Okay? That's the opposite way around. That's not what we are meant to believe, at least, is happening. And people like me, I believed it till, it had really started cracking prior to 2020, but 2020 was just the end of it. This is not believable anymore. These people are clearly not looking out for the interests of the people at all. The COVID response had nothing to do with preserving our society. In fact, it was something that was scripted and war gamed and then brought into existence on the false reality layer to initiate the Great Reset and lead us into it. And in many ways, we are being led into it. And, my friend Burning Bright will talk about a good reset versus the Great Reset, like the Great Reset, quote unquote, that's the enemy plan. And the good reset would then be, we know that there has to be a reset. This is the one that is not that dystopia ahead. So it might be. And I started the year talking about hijacking the Great Reset, okay? That these things are still running concurrently and in many ways interlocked and aligned, and eventually there's going to have to be that divergence, okay? I've talked about it before, two cowboy gangs riding down the sides of a canyon, trying to rob this train, one on each side. They all get to the train, they battle it out on the train, and only one of those sides is going to go ahead with the train. Okay. And so we have that with the Uniparty right side of the regime and the tech bro complex for the most part, not all of them. And we need to be sure that we are able to separate from that at some point. And the most important part of being able to do that is knowing that it's there. Okay. And so with the reality show thing in mind, I had a couple of posts from yesterday that I want to talk about. Oh, cool. Truth Social is down. Let me see if I can grab this off Telegram. Truth Social is down for me. It might not be down for you. I don't know how it works all the time, okay? So I'm not announcing Truth Social is down, just to be very, very clear. I am, however... Oh, man. I know I posted these yesterday. What in the heck is going on here? Oh, geez. Oh, there we go. All right. It's all going to be okay. I grabbed this post like 3 times and didn't. Oh, here we are. Jeez, man. It's not letting me get to that post. I can see the other posts and not that one. Hold for processing. I'm sorry this is taking so long. Okay, here we are. Okay. I said the American political reality show is an info op. The info op is the negotiation leverage. The negotiation happens only behind the scenes. We are watching a very stupid and obviously fake reality show. It's not more than that. It's like a sport where degenerate dorks are the star players. It doesn't make sense and it doesn't have to. It only has meaning to the extent that its audience's adherence to the show's ideology keeps their system alive. It doesn't make sense and it doesn't matter. If you want it to be what you thought it was, get involved locally and stop recognizing the fake government's legitimacy. Demand the end of the American political soap opera by tuning out. And I wish now that I said reality show. In fact, I changed it at the beginning and missed this part at the end. And I wrote, and just to be perfectly clear, the info op is entirely real. In fact, it's the only layer on which you can interact with a meaningful, legitimate reality. That is still a worthy project because there is a way out. And I do believe that that's a worthy project. The fact that what we are watching is a reality show doesn't mean that the info war is not happening for real and must therefore be fought and won. Okay? One side or the other will attract the public consciousness. And if the American people are able to coalesce around what's right and what's good, over time, and this is where we hope it's going, then we should be able to overcome the evil twin. Now, you can't overcome the evil twin forever because humans are fallen. We will always have the tendency toward evil within us. Okay, so you can't just correct society this way, but you can win over the collective consciousness and preserve that through generations. That's the ideal goal and outcome. And some people might say that that process can only last for 250 years, those 4 turnings. And that at that point, it's just got to start over again, because that many generations having gone by means that the lessons that were learned by generations 250 years ago have all been forgotten and inverted again. Okay. And that process can go on just forever. Recognizing that the reality show is a reality show is not a reason that the info war then doesn't matter. Okay. There is nothing fake about the fact, the real fact, that the internet is showing us fake news. All right. The story being referenced isn't real, doesn't have to be real, but there is a force communicating to us that fake news and the meaning that we are supposed to extract from that fake news. Okay. So I went on to say, the point of life is not knowing the most about what's happening on television. It just really isn't. Memorizing the details of these complete and total fictions is totally unnecessary when the only point of these fictions is to get you to react in a certain way. There doesn't have to be any underlying truth. It can be a story that is faked entirely, and the only thing that will matter is why that story is being told to us, who's the target audience, what is the meaning that we are meant to extract from this story. That's the only layer on which we can interact with these stories at all. Okay, because at the very, very bottom of them, all of it is unprovable. And all of it is what we are seeing is a bullshit layer primarily on top of the reality prime layer. And so we need to figure out what is over there and get rid of that. But the point isn't to know everything about the bullshit layer. Okay, that would be, and no offense, Game of Thrones fans, but very dorky. Same thing with Tolkien. And I like them both. But they memorize the details of complete and total fictions. And that's fine because they know they're doing it. And it's something that they enjoy. It's a hobby. They find it rewarding. Okay? All good. Dorky, but all good. Let me pause for 1 second. So they will memorize all the details of a complete and total fiction for pure enjoyment. We're not doing it for that. Or we are, and we pretend it's something else. Okay? If we are being entertained by the political reality show day to day, and there's a lot of America that is only doing that. They want to be able to own the libs. They want to be able to sound smart around the water cooler. And so they turn on Fox News every night because you don't really know what's going on, but you have a story that you can repeat that other people will know as part of the conversation. And then it will only appear as a difference in opinion about the underlying truth we know to be real, even though it's not. Let me continue. I wrote this last night. I don't think I posted it, though. People think that the reality show / movie, because that's how a lot of people refer to it, is something other than it is. Many in MAGA and the so-called truth community think it's about this secret story plan that makes Republicans win fake elections. The point of being told you're watching a movie is not to pretend it's all real and that you only need to support the right characters. Okay? We cannot be pretending it's real and interacting with it that way if we know we're watching a movie or a reality show. Okay. It doesn't matter which, and by the way, the news is a reality show. It is a story. They are presenting a story about reality. There's no requirement that that story is true in reality. It only has to attach to things in reality so that we will believe it could exist in reality. And then it's just a matter of whether or not we trust the screen and the person on the other side of it, if it's a person at all. So if we are aware that we're watching a reality show or a movie and we interact with it as though it's real, then it has the desired emotional response from the regime. And then very likely the action response that the regime demands will follow that. Okay. And maybe all the action they want is inaction. Okay. Focus on the politics of the American federal government. Don't focus on what's happening in your town. Why does the political soap opera so rarely ever deal with any local issue anywhere? Okay. It's only national politics television all the time. Just a reality show about national politics. And that reality show appears in different formats all over the airwaves. It also appears in other television show genres and formats that we're not aware of, like the fact that a false reality is presented endlessly during the commercials of professional sports games, okay? NFL games, soccer matches, all the commercials will just be, all of them will represent a reality unlike the one we are truly experiencing. It will be trying to lead us into a future by convincing us that's already how it is, so that we will accept it at that point. And of course, our elections are that way as well. We still believe that the elections are a true representation of what the broad public believes, what our peers believe, what our fellow Americans believe. The elections tell us, oh, it's a 50-50 country. But it's not a 50-50 country. And the elections are fake, so therefore that can't be proof that it is a 50-50 country. And the polls are fake, okay? So we know all of that, and then we still accept that all of it is real and interact with it as though all of that is real, just because other people believe the same false thing. It's like we all agree to watch it used to be the World Wrestling Federation, but World Wrestling Entertainment, the WWE, that we all watch it, and we all know that it's fake, real kayfabe, the origin of kayfabe, okay? We all know it's fake, but we still agree to interact with it as though it's real. That's crazy, okay? Like you would be lying to yourself, convincing yourself of something, maybe just for the entertainment and enjoyment, but because you don't want to believe that it is fake and you're just wasting your time. So with that said, that was a long introduction. Let me have a look over at the chat. Everybody seems to be doing well over there on Rumble. And by the way, I know I don't say this very often, but please go ahead and hit that thumbs up if you can. Theoretically, at least, that is supposed to help. And if it does, cool. And if it doesn't, then we just take another spin around the, what do they call it? A mouse wheel, whatever. I feel like there's a word for that, and it's not coming to mind. And someone's going to be like, duh, you idiot, in the chat. It's this. And by the way, if you do that, I'll be very happy, because now I'll just think about it for the rest of the show. So part of the reality show, of course, is the people who are communicating to us. And we make value judgments on those people communicating to us. We first determine whether they are on our side or the enemy side. Okay. And different people use different metrics to do that. I try to see good twin, evil twin, and actually listen to what they say and follow what they do. And we can leave room that it might all be an info op and they just might be acting things out in very direct and specific ways. And so then maybe our moral calculation changes because we know what they're doing, and that's fine. But the rest of the time, assuming that it's not all just a fake and a con job and that these people are representing themselves, well, then we try to assign them good or bad, trust or distrust. And we know that the quote unquote other side has their own set of characters. And we know that because they like those characters, like they like Rachel Maddow and Chris Hayes and Joy Reid and Anderson Cooper. And we're like, okay, well, those people are definitely the enemies. And maybe they are. Or maybe they're intelligence assets running an info op on their audience. They're definitely intelligence assets running an info op on their audience. And we know that. And we're still like, I trust this one. Don't trust that one. That's crazy. But we try to find out who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. And then we grovel before the good guys that we've decided and don't judge in any real way what it is they're actually doing. We just understand they're on our side, and that is all we need. So we've talked quite a bit about the influencer op, the Con Inc. influencer op. That's been going on for the whole time, obviously. But I think I really, truly became aware of the split in late 2022 when the Ron DeSantis thing began. And you'll remember Ron DeSantis didn't announce till May of 2023, 7 months after Trump had first said de sanctimonious, and then everyone in the Ron op immediately outed themselves in their anti-Trump nature. All the people who are sometimes Trump. They didn't support Trump before 2016. They pretended to support him for 4 years and did support him when their interests were aligned. And then they immediately tried to get rid of him, agreed that Joe Biden was actually elected with 81 million real lawful American votes. And then they made a case that Trump was committing vaccine genocide and that he would lose the 2024 election to Joe Biden. And we just needed to move on so that none of them would ever be held to account for the positions that they had pushed post the 2020 election. That election was stolen. They pretended it wasn't stolen, and they pretended that we just had to, regardless, we had to call Biden the president and think that we were still dealing with politics as usual. After COVID, after the fake election, after the insurrection, after Afghanistan, after Ukraine, after the paragliding go-kart incident, the vaccine mandates, the rest of it, that's a lot. And through all that, they were on the wrong side of every one of those issues. And then finally, you know, they came around, they move around. They're like, oh, yeah, I've thought that the whole time. Have you? No. Okay, so delaying on a timeline in that instance, it's important to remember that aspect of it as well. But let's go to this article from Breitbart. This is from just yesterday. Exclusive, Democrats plan to spend tens of millions of dollars to fund hundreds of content creators. That's a lot of money for content creators. And we were told at the end of the election cycle that Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro had, and their networks of young people, had won Donald Trump the 2024 fake election. That definitely didn't need Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro for that outcome to be achieved. There was no way that outcome could avoid being achieved. I argued that throughout 2024. Okay. There's no narrative operation that was going to convince the people that Joe Biden or Kamala Harris actually could have defeated Donald Trump last year. That's just not plausible. And because it's not plausible, and because the other side knows it's not plausible, they couldn't do it. What they did instead was focus on putting the Uniparty everywhere else they could. And I think that they've done that job with some success, although I could also totally understand that this is all going exactly according to plan, and that the control over the winners of elections has shifted and been changed, and that the side with the leverage is often putting terrible, terrible enemies in important positions to inform us about what the enemies are doing. And so on either side of all of those battles is a massive network of internet personalities, everything from the kind of MAGA celebs all the way down to micro influencers in small communities, a church leader, something like that. We know that those networks exist. They were exposed throughout COVID. And we know that they go after micro influencers as well. People you won't even know are influencers in any way. They just meet certain engagement and trust metrics that they are targeted to help with the rollout of the comms campaign. So this is not anything new. And we've been, I said we were told Ben Shapiro and Charlie Kirk won the election for Trump last year. And then we were told immediately that what the left needed to do was find their own Joe Rogan, because Joe Rogan, of course, had also won the election for Donald Trump by hosting Donald Trump and J.D. Vance for conversations where Trump had a great interview. J.D. tried to bro out and be charming as always and say the things that the normie cons and idiots think are like, oh, that's very conservative. That's very conservative. All of that was credited for Donald Trump's win in a fake election that he could not have lost. Okay, so all of that immediately appears as a regime info op. And since then, we've heard that the Democrats are going to respond with their own program along the same lines. The article says Democrats are planning to spend tens of millions of dollars to spin narratives on social media as part of a $110.5 million fundraising effort, according to images of slides from Democrat Congressional Committee donor from DCCC donor event obtained by Breitbart. Under a heading, Urgent Off-Year Funding Needs, on one slide, it states the DCCC looks to raise $10 million for social media and content creation, $20 million for accountability work, $15 million for voter registration, $5 million for recruitment and primary engagement, and $2 million for research and a rapid response infrastructure. One goal is to enlist at least 667 content creators. I bet it was 666.6, and then they just rounded up. 667 content creators with the aim of reaching 83 million Americans, drawing 6.6 million engagements, per another slide that focuses on content creation. The program aims to engage at least 167 non-political creators and 8 vetted creators for ads in every target state. So they want non-political creators. They want people who are like fashion bloggers, okay? Because they can tuck the message behind something else. And over time, the message that exists behind the content people are consuming, that'll become a thing for people. They know they can condition people to various political responses. And they can do it all the better when someone doesn't know that's what's being done to them. The same applies, by the way, to conversion and sales online. The pro-Democrat Zinc Collective Super PAC is listed on the slide, implying its involvement with the boot camp. Zinc Collective lists Robbie Mook, the campaign manager for Hillary Clinton's failed 2016 Democrat presidential campaign, as one of 4 key advisors, along with former senior advisor to Speaker Emerita. They still say that. I don't know why Breitbart says that, but whatever. Former advisor to Nancy Pelosi, Mike Smith. The effort comes as Republicans have dominated the social media sphere over Democrats. For example, in June alone, the Team Trump account on Twitter, led by Alex Brusiewicz and his firm X Strategies, amassed 200 million more views on Instagram and TikTok than the official Democrat Party accounts on both platforms, according to data reviewed by Breitbart News at the time. Brusiewicz tells Breitbart News it is comical that Democrats are now spending big to try to compete with him and the GOP's powerhouse social media presence. It's hilarious and pathetic that Democrats are begging their donors for tens of millions of dollars to try to compete with our online presence, which we maintain on a shoestring budget, he said in a statement. We don't pay creators to back President Trump. His leadership naturally inspires widespread, authentic support. And that may well be true for Alex Brusiewicz's organization. I like Alex Brusiewicz. But there are also people who are pitching certain, occasionally pro-MAGA messaging who are absolutely paid as part of InfoOps to do that. Now, we have talked many times about Bari Weiss. Bari Weiss was the New York Times writer who left. She became the anti-woke crusader among woke liberals at the New York Times. She was the one that we could take seriously. She went out and started a website called The Free Press. One of the key investors in the Free Press, as we've discussed before, is a man named Mark Andreessen. Mark Andreessen is one of the tech oligarch class. He's also the guy responsible for that Signal chat that we discussed a few months back, 3-4 months back. Ben Smith, also former New York Times from the same era as Bari Weiss, he did an article for Semaphore where he talked about this 300-person text message group started by Andreessen and many of his peers that include all of these political podcasters, some people who are actually in politics, different media communicators, etc., finance guys, tech guys, and all of these people were kind of creating the messaging ecosystem. That was all presented as something that was kind of on the right, quote unquote, and the right in America is just also the left, okay? Like the establishment Republicans are not by any real standard conservative. They have allowed the country to be turned into this and been complicit in that process as good, controlled opposition, okay? So we are presented that this is a right of center text message group, and Mark Andreessen, I think, was Trump friendly in 2024 and went along with the rest of the tech oligarchs. But he also invests heavily in Bari Weiss's new media project, The Free Press. And by new, I mean 2 or 3 years old, maybe older than that. I think like 3 years old. Here we are in the New York Post. Bari Weiss looking to sell The Free Press for $250 million. Bari Weiss has been shopping her startup news outlet, The Free Press, for as much as $250 million, according to a report. Weiss, who quit the New York Times opinion page over its woke policies and launched the outlet in 2022, has reportedly met with Skydance Media CEO David Ellison at the high-powered Allen & Co. Summer Camp for Billionaires in Sun Valley, Idaho, earlier this month. And again, that's the same summer camp for billionaires as last summer when Peter Thiel and Reid Hoffman got into a shouting match over martyring Trump 2 days before assassination event number 1, which then was 2 days before Peter Thiel's guy, J.D. Vance, got named to be the running mate in the fake campaign leading up to the fake election. And now we are supposed to call him vice president or whatever. Ellison, the son of Oracle founder Larry Ellison, was reportedly interested in buying the Free Press as Skydance continues to await regulatory approval of its $8 billion merger with CBS parent Paramount. And this is actually a couple weeks old. That has been approved at this point, okay? So that merger has gone through, and we discussed that last week. We were told by the machine that it was proof of Donald Trump's corruption that the board approved of this merger. It was Donald Trump using leverage and getting himself a payout from 60 Minutes and a settlement from Skydance, the promise of doing future pro-America content and providing their platforms for America First messaging. And all of this was supposed to be some sort of bribe. Trump accepted all of those benefits, and for those benefits, he gave them the go-ahead from a regulating body that shouldn't exist to go ahead and make that merger. The FT report also cited sources as saying that Weiss held discussions with the Post's parent company News Corp about a possible collaboration, though that did not include any discussions about a possible acquisition. That would be incredible. Fox News, under the same umbrella as the Wall Street Journal, the New York Post, and the Free Press. And just yesterday, we got a cover on the New York Post that they're setting up a California Post. So the Murdochs are making a lot of moves for people who are being sued by the President of the United States of America and who are going to be on the line for helping to steal the 2020 election eventually, and then settling with Dominion and the rest of it. Trump's been going after Fox News. We talked about the day after the military parade, the Monday after the military parade on this year's show. We talked about, hold on one second. Sorry. We talked about how Tucker Carlson and Steve Bannon were Bannon's show, War Room, 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. or whatever it is, on Monday morning. I always just watch the clips afterward. He had Eric Trump on to talk about Donald Trump as a rhino hunter. Then he had Tucker Carlson on to talk about Fox News and Mark Levin and some Israel stuff. And then the Ted Cruz interview with Tucker came a couple days later. So we have been in this rhino hunting period now for a little while. And throughout that time, Trump has been going pretty hard after Fox News, especially when he was announcing the lawsuit and the rest of it. And now, to be clear, I believe all of that is happening on a story layer, and it is a public communication about changes that have already been made. And I think we're going to see that a bunch of times in the stories that we go through today. But I think that's what that is, that we are just, seeing announcements about deals that are already done and getting a narrative delivery system for those facts that everyone needs to know and really come to terms with. And so I think that's hence the cycles, right? This is changing subjects. But not totally, okay? It's a little different, but I think that it kind of connects a little bit because this is the set building for the reality show we are watching. And this is a new set, and I'm sure wonderful stories will take place in this new set. This is the National Pulse from July 31st, what Trump's new White House ballroom will look like. Donald Trump announced plans for new White House State Ballroom to address the need for a larger event space on the White House complex. McCrary Architects is designing, Clark Construction, ACOM, White House staff, the National Park Service, and the U.S. Secret Service are all involved in the process of bringing this room together. The article says President Trump announced a solution to what it calls a 150-year-old problem: the commander-in-chief's inability to host large-scale events on the White House complex. President Donald J. Trump and his press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, announced today the construction of a new state ballroom. The proposed White House State Ballroom will be approximately 90,000 square feet and accommodate 650 seated guests, a significant increase from the East Room's 200-person capacity. President Trump has met with White House staff, the National Park Service, the White House Military Office, the U.S. Secret Service, to finalize design and planning details. And I imagine that there are going to be rather incredible events happening here. And if you can see what's on the screen right now, sorry, audio people, there are some pictures of what the design is meant to look like. And it is a new wing of the White House complex, if I'm not mistaken. I believe that this will be an entirely new structure. And it is really beginning to look like a palace. That is a different presentation for the reality show. Are we becoming the British? I mean, the British have a monarch, right? But everything is run by Parliament and the courts. The monarch has virtually no say, unless the monarch needs to have a say because somehow the Parliament and the courts got out of control. Has the British monarch been anything? The British monarch is actually, it seems to be disappearing. There are shows like every day. King Charles can't have his Balmoral Castle open. King Charles is about to die. King Charles has a cancer thing. The British monarchy is evaporating before our eyes, but a new British monarchy might be forming in the United States of America, or it will be something else. But I've said many times, Trump has been presenting as king of the world, and he has been presented as king of the world by leaders of other nations. And really, the judges for who is the king of the world come down to the leaders of other nations. All right. Now, maybe there's not a king of the world. Maybe there are regional responsibilities or whatever. But there are other considerable powers in the world who recognize Donald Trump as the guy to deal with, and not the Uniparty regime and not the Democrats or establishment Republicans and the rest of them. And so that's part of what the real struggle is. But that looks like a palace. And if you are going to present Donald Trump as the king, it would look a lot like this. Susie Wiles said, President Trump is a builder at heart and has an extraordinary eye for detail. The president and the Trump White House are fully committed to working with the appropriate organizations to preserving the special history of the White House while building a beautiful ballroom that can be enjoyed by future administrations and generations of Americans to come. And they are also focused on communicating to the public that the White House is the American people's house. Melania Trump actually just announced yesterday that she was seeking people to help with the planning of their Christmas event. And I don't know what all that's going to end up entailing, but a recruitment, just an open call for performers who would like to be involved and for people who would like to be involved on the planning and execution phase of the White House Christmas project, because they're trying to open the people's house to the people, which I think is very interesting. But back around to the optics on this, that's going to be a major change. I think that we are seeing an indication that the way the American president is going to be presented to the American public and to the world is changing substantially. And I can imagine that going one of two ways. Okay, as always, there's the good twin possibility, the evil twin possibility, the Great Reset possibility, the hijacking of the Great Reset possibility. Okay, so it can be that the regime wants to use the British monarch story template and change America into that. Okay, and we can see that for the British, having a monarch has not protected them from the global regime's agenda. In fact, the monarch is just an avatar so that the global regime's agenda can be implemented underneath through what the British see as the legitimate powers in their country. And so we can imagine that model where we become some kind of monarchy and that monarch is just a figurehead. Or we can see the other version where that monarch is the one that protects the nation from that global regime force. Okay. And if you go back through history, you have to wonder if when monarchs are being overthrown, they're being overthrown by those regime forces that want to change the form of government to align with the global regime. A monarch, a singular control system with considerable power, but maybe not absolute power. That presents a real problem for that agenda if that guy's not serving that agenda. And I think that many of us believe that Donald Trump is acting in that role. And I hope that he's acting in that role, because if he's not, and we are simply being dog walked into a dystopia, well, that would be very, very bad. That would be the worst thing, because not only have we allowed that to take place, we were actually helping it. Okay. And that's the thing that I think we all want to avoid. Now, one of the ways that that global regime can be actually taken out of power potentially is through a change in the global financial system, and most particularly the fiat dollar as handed down from the global regime central bankers through the Fed, and it ends up with us as our money is just constantly devalued. This is Adam Livingston on Bitcoin. And I'm not going to go through the whole post because a lot of this is directed at Bitcoin maxis and different behaviors, and we don't need that part, but I do want to focus on the first part of this. This is from X, formerly Twitter, Adam B. Live, if you want to find him. So he shows a meme, and the meme says Bitcoiners 2013, and it's a bunch of Wojaks, like strong Jim Wojaks. It says Silk Road, F government, WikiLeaks, P2P cash. Like that was back when everybody was real strong about being independent and following that path only, right? Like true Bitcoin maximalism. We are going to push Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the solution to this overall system. We're going to push that as hard and fast as we can in all of these different directions because we know how we're being screwed. And so you go from Bitcoiners in 2013 on the meme to Bitcoiners in 2024. And again, these are the degenerate, retarded Wojaks saying ETF, please, simp to Daddy Trump, JP Morgan, please buy, please allow self-custody. Now, the conversation within the Bitcoin community is interesting at times, but it's not my biggest priority. So I don't care about that stuff so much. But he says, Adam Livingston says, this meme is the ultimate cope, a whiny, low testosterone, mid-wit tier cope. It's the digital tantrum of people who've never understood Bitcoin's game theory, economics, or thermodynamic inevitability. So now they see that the fact that Bitcoin is winning in the exact way it was always destined to. You thought Bitcoin was going to be adopted by anarchist art majors living in yurts, that the future of money was going to be secured by a drum circle and a Tor browser? Wrong. It's hilarious seeing people say that Bitcoin is captured. Wrong. Do you not understand decentralization? Bitcoin is capturing capital. It's doing what it was designed to do. Siphon value from broken institutions, co-opt the incentives of the elite, and become the apex monetary protocol, not by virtue signaling, but by engineering superiority. JP Morgan buying Bitcoin, good. It means Jamie Dimon now dances for Satoshi. BlackRock launching an ETF, good. It means Larry Fink is now a Bitcoin marketing arm. The state legalizing custody, good. The empire is kneeling, not conquering. Bitcoin isn't becoming institutionalized. Institutions are becoming Bitcoinized. And if you're mad about that, he says you're not a freedom fighter and goes on. And we can leave it there. But I think his points are excellent up till then. I'm not 100% sure he's right, but I hope that he is. And what we are seeing is one maximal version against the inversion of that concept, okay? We're talking decentralization. Part of true decentralization is if people with capital are able to invest in that, they're going to. It's not just this immediately levels the playing field. We all get our proper allotted amount of Bitcoin, all 8 billion of us on this earth. I mean, come on, it's not that. But we would all get some small amount of Bitcoin. That would be our Bitcoin, and then we'll just see what happens. Everybody has the same thing. Everybody just starts in the same place. That was never going to be it, okay? There's a lot of people with a lot of money, and it's fiat money, and they can acquire Bitcoin. So it will be institutionalized in some ways. It is a matter of how we interact with its institutionalization that will determine the future for what it is. If people stick to principles about decentralization and the rest of it, well, then maybe it can work. And if people don't adhere to those principles at all, and instead just want to maintain the same convenience that they believe they've always had in their debit cards and their phone payments and cash or whatever it might be, that will lead us into a different place entirely. So it's important that those principles are adhered to. And we have to do that all the time throughout the process, because otherwise you end up with the inverted version where you have decided this solution is the right solution and then allowed it to be captured. Now, Livingston is not concerned about that. And I think that he has at least some good justification for that position, if it's what we are told it is. And if it is that, then good. And his logic and game theory make total sense. And hopefully we will be headed down that road. But it's not necessarily true. And ultimately, there's no utopia to be created in this realm in the first place. Okay, not all the problems are going to be solved. Some of my friends think all the problems will be solved. Doesn't account for human nature. Doesn't account for the fact that we still have to have a society. Okay, just like it's not going to be hippies in yurts having all the Bitcoin, it's also not going to be the Bitcoiners just surviving in a state of nature as the tiny proportion of the 1% with the rest of humanity all enslaved. Okay. So there's different ways that things can go. And it's critically important that we are understanding the possibility, the thing and its opposite. Okay. The inversion on the other side, that we're able to pass the taste test so that we can know, yes, this is the right way to go. And nobody's going to be perfect at that, but we have to be discerning and trying to do that. And let's talk about some of the reasons as we get into some tech. This, I have, give me 1 second here. I think I brought up the wrong link. When you're copy and pasting as many links as I do when setting these up, occasionally I will throw them in the wrong place. Here we are. In fact, I already had it done. Here we are.
Place in China, it's called 15-minute cities, where in order for me to enter my apartment complex, I have to do a biometric scan. In order for me to leave my apartment, I have to do a biometric scan. That information gets sent to the government agency or police station, and it gets you logged in. So much so to the point where if you have a poor social credit score and you do a biometric scan and you want to get into your apartment, it says access denied. They don't even let you into your own home. It's getting really crazy. And during COVID, the 15-minute city lockdowns, you couldn't leave your apartment.
Now, that, my friends, is the dystopia that we may get dog walked into, and hopefully we won't. And the way that that won't happen is if we provide some resistance. And I made this meme today. I forgot to post it, but I'm going to show it right now and then I'll post it later. Here we are. So it's the Drake meme where he's refusing one thing and agreeing to go along with the other thing. And so I'm like blocking simp out. Nobody needs to simp out. Everybody needs to chimp out. And we're going to talk about that later when we talk about Israel, assuming we get there. But chimping out is fine. And by chimping out, that means the angry reaction to bad news. And it's fine on the level that it needs to be communicated to the public that that thing is bad. Okay. And one of the examples of chimping out is some of that Israel stuff. When Trump is believed to be aligning with that, people immediately get really mad at Trump and they say that Trump is owned by Israel. Now, I don't believe that's true. I have never believed that's true. I've argued on the show before that it's not true. But there is a worthwhile chimp out in there, okay? It is definitely the case that Donald Trump, that the American president should not be Israel first and should not be making special exceptions for Israel and the rest of it. That doesn't mean, therefore, that Donald Trump is sold out, okay? It's important to chimp out and get mad at the issue. It's not important, it's not good to get to target the wrong cause of the bad situation and do the enemy's job for them by fighting against the potential solution. So the chimp out is good. The public needs to know that there's a lot of resistance to this thing that's happening. It's also just good because people can see, oh, wait, that guy maybe isn't the cult that we always thought it was. Okay. It's true. It's not. It's actually there is a cult, and it is the establishment of both parties and the supporters of the establishments of both parties. Okay. The reaction, though, even aside from that, is good because the messaging needs to get out there. And so with that in mind, the 15-minute cities, that level of control would absolutely be the dystopia that we have heard about. They would have the ability to influence your behavior in ways that you could never imagine. It is a very, very punishing social credit structure that has the potential to change your life if you fail to comply. That is as bad as it gets. Okay, you cannot even exercise the freedom of your own conscience in a situation with that level of control. And so it needs to be avoided at all costs. The chimp out is warranted. It's just important who's being targeted in the chimp out and how we are really discerning within that. What is the right thing to get mad at? What is the thing that we are being led to by the regime? Okay, because there's going to be two different options for what you can freak out about. You can freak out about Trump, or you can just stand on principle and say, yeah, sorry, Israel, you don't get any more American help. You are not actually our greatest ally. Okay? Those are two different approaches to that problem. And there is one very obvious info op that is pushing the Trump is the problem notion. And maybe I should have waited a little bit on that so that we could talk directly about the Israel thing. But I don't want to get too out of order with what I had lined up when I was putting the show together. So we will come back to that. Let's go right now to this. This is from last week. And this is one of those things that I didn't see a chimp out over. And I think that there should be a chimp out over. Now, it doesn't mean that we assume that Donald Trump is intentionally dog walking us into a dystopia. But this would be an example, if that is what's happening, of exactly that. Okay. This right here is a great reset agenda item that was widely discussed in 2020. And as we go through this, I think that you will, if you've been listening to the show for a long time, remember some of the discussion from back then. Trump administration is launching a new private health tracking system with big tech's help. The Trump administration announced it is launching a new program that will allow Americans to share personal health data and medical records across health systems and apps run by private tech companies, promising that will make it easier to access health records and monitor wellness. For more than 60 companies, including major tech companies like Google, Amazon, and Apple, as well as healthcare giants like United Health Group and CVS Health, have agreed to share patient data in the system. The initiative will focus on diabetes and weight management, conversational artificial intelligence that helps patients, and digital tools such as QR codes and apps that register patients for check-ins or track medications. The system, spearheaded by an administration that has already freely shared highly personal data about Americans in ways that have tested legal bounds, could put patients' desires for more convenience at their doctor's office on a collision course with their expectations that their medical information be kept quiet. And I think that is absolutely critical, because as bad as private corporations might be, and it might be that all of this has already happened, and I would suspect on some level it already is, at least that's just one entity, and they are, your medical provider, for instance, is not allowed to just share your medical records with anyone. But these app developers, this program is totally opt-in. So if you opt in to the sharing of your medical information, it is being presented to us as, here is an opportunity that you control your medical records rather than these private corporations. But what it really is that you allow others to control your medical records across a much wider range of organizations. They're all centralizing this data into the same place. And this too can be used to control people. What if you have a bad diet, for instance? What if you've had certain heart diseases or whatever, and then they're monitoring your spending habits when you're buying certain kinds of food, and they won't allow you to buy certain kinds of food because they say it's going to make your heart problem worse, and therefore you're going to be a drain on the system. You just can't have this thing. That's not impossible. And we heard throughout 2020, through that COVID period, all the reasons why it was good to have a system like that. We heard all sorts of stuff about contact tracing, new apps that were going to be set up, vaccine identification by your phone so that you could prove your vaccine status. All of these are elements of your medical data that are being shared with corporations that are just as bad as the others. These are the big tech companies, and we are supposed to trust it because it's happening under this government. Okay? It's not the Great Reset. It can't be the Great Reset because it's happening under Trump. Now, maybe there's a good argument to be made for programs like this, but I haven't seen it. Okay. And I'm going to put on Amy Gleason to talk. She spoke at the event. Trump announced this last week. And I want to share this Amy Gleason bit. I'm just speeding it up to 1.25 here for the interest of time. But this is from the Trump announcement event last week. And Badlands hosted this. So thanks for doing that, guys.
The pieces of this puzzle with so many members of the audience. Amy Gleason.
Good afternoon. First, I would like to thank President Trump for his leadership in this area, and Secretary Kennedy and Administrator Oz for driving this work with clarity and urgency. I would also like to thank my colleagues who've been instrumental to this, and we worked a lot of late nights and hard times on this, and it would not have been possible without them. I want to start today with my daughter Morgan, who's here in the audience. If you please stand up. I am so inspired and energized by your strength every day. And we also have two other patients here, Randy and Tom, who have been very inspiring. Thank you for being here today. You're why this all matters. Let me start talking about my daughter's history. So 15 years ago, she was diagnosed with a rare disease. She was 11 years old, and she started showing mysterious symptoms. Over the last year and a half after that, she saw the country's best doctors, but she still continued to get worse. At some point, she couldn't stand up off the floor or walk up the stairs, and we still had no answers. I carried a binder of paper records to every doctor's appointment so that I could keep them aligned. And I truly believe that if one of those doctors had been able to see her whole history, they would have diagnosed her faster. And if we had just had today's AI, then they could have connected the dots that the humans missed. Today, Morgan takes 21 pills a day, gets 2 infusions a month, and has over 40 patient portals. Her disease is very rare, but her experience is very common. And that is what we're here to fix today. Too many patients are forced to remember all the doctors that they've been to and log into portal after portal, repeating their story at every visit, and they don't have the digital tools to help them stay well. Meanwhile, every other part of our life is digital. I can order groceries and have them delivered in minutes. I get personalized recommendations on my other apps. But in healthcare, we still see it on paper and manual situations. But today, thanks to President Trump, we're changing that. Over 15 years, we've tried to regulate our way to a better outcome. And we have gotten a path forward, but they have not delivered the modern healthcare experience that Americans expect and deserve. I'm so proud today that these 60 companies have voluntarily.
Do you expect and deserve the modern healthcare system that they are presenting? Oh, let's keep going.
Step forward to make a pledge, to take action, and to join us, to say, we're ready. Let's fix this. We're in. We're trying something different. It's not regulation or rulemaking. This is a voluntary alignment around a shared vision, a commitment to work across boundaries, across competitors, and across silos. We're bringing together data sharing networks, electronic medical records, doctors, health systems, payers, and app developers. And we're asking one simple question. What can we do right now to make this work for patients? The companies pledging today are agreeing to collaborate, even with their direct competitors, because they know we can't keep kicking the can down the road. We have to stop talking about data interoperability and make the data flow. Here's something important. Not all patients will want these tools. Some will rely on their caregivers, and others will rely on their doctors, so they don't have to carry it themselves. But no matter how people engage, we must make sure it works for everyone. CMS is doing its part. We're clearing the path for innovation by building the long overdue National Provider Directory, a kind of digital map for healthcare that connects systems in real time and helps patients get more coordinated care. We're also modernizing Medicare.gov to feel more seamless and smart like other apps we use. But the government can't do this and shouldn't do it alone. These tools we need to make daily decisions must come from the private sector, and that's why this is so important. So let me tell you what this might look like after our collaborative effort. So Morgan, in 6 months from now, might show up to her doctor's appointment. Instead of filling out a clipboard with her 21 medications, 12 doctors, and her entire medical history, she can just pull out her phone and tap or scan a QR code and seamlessly transfer her digital insurance card, her verified medical record, and a digital summary that could help her provider get up to speed faster. We call this kill the clipboard, as President Trump said. After the visit, Morgan opens her AI assistant, a tool that she has authorized to access her records, and asks, what did the doctor say today? What did these results mean? What should I watch for now? And the assistant responds using her actual health history, explains her care plan in plain language, helps her track her symptoms, and even schedules follow-up visits if she needs them. And lastly, she has a new favorite app that helps her manage her chronic conditions. Because for years, Morgan has said what other patients say. I only see a doctor a few days a year, but I live with this disease every day. Today, we're starting with apps that can support patients 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world. They don't replace doctors. They just fill in the gap between visits so that care is continuous and not episodic. So what makes this effort different? Today, we have all these apps that want to provide these services, but they can't get the data because it is so hard for patients to access their records. But today, we have 18 network companies who are here pledging to fix the infrastructure that makes this possible.
She said there are apps that want to make this happen, but they can't get the data because the patients have a hard time getting the data. But if they could get the data, they would already be using all that data. And here comes the reason.
They're doing this through modern data sharing networks that removes the burden on patients and providers and makes it available in real time using modern identity, just like when you check in at the airport. These honor patient privacy and transparency. And most importantly, it's a movement to work together to remove the friction that's holding us back. Because
just like at the airport. Just like at the airport. Look how secure this is. Don't you feel secure when you're at the airport and you're having an X-ray of your genitals taken? Don't you feel secure when they are wiping down your electronic devices with that little paper strip or whatever the hell it is? Don't you feel secure when they're digging through your luggage? That's exactly what we want everywhere. Now, I did an episode back in 2021 or 2022 about Clear, the Clear company. And the sales pitch from Clear, and I think it's also Clearview AI. I think these things are combined. They were talking about a lot of contact tracing and stuff. And the story we were getting was this app is going to have your medical data, your vaccine status on it. And then every place you need to show that to get into, it's just right there. It's going to be so easy. Yes, you need to show something to get into the place that you never had to show anything before. But now we can reduce that friction to zero if we have all your data. And if we have all your data, then we can allow you to do all these things. So by all means, go ahead and do them. The argument is about friction, but they are creating the friction in the first place. Okay. There's not, I think the example was that they gave was like, if you go to work, you got to check into work. And then later on, you're going to go to a movie theater. So you got to check in there. And then to dinner, you got to check in there. And then you go back to your house and you got to check in there. And if this app has your vaccine status on it, you can just use the same app for all those things when you have to check in. And that's going to reduce the friction of having to check in at each place with an individual app or piece of information or whatever. It's going to reduce the friction that they've created. And we are being told that this is essentially that same model. This is going to reduce the friction. You're going to get better healthcare and hence better results because you've given us all your data, and our AI is allowed to use your data and tell you what it is you must be doing. And then we might have these controls on the back end to make sure that all of that is enforced. Now, I don't know what's supposed to be good about this. Okay. I don't know what Trump thinks is good about this. I just know it's not good. I try to avoid the medical industrial complex at all turns. Okay. I don't ever want to be anywhere near a doctor. Now, I know that eventually I will probably have health problems as people do as they age, and then they will need doctors. But right now, after what I witnessed in 2020 and what we all witnessed in 2020, I think keeping the medical industry as far away as possible is advisable. I don't actually want to reduce friction in these industries, and especially not with these tech companies, because they're all the same tech companies with all this access. So the bad team is already getting all of our data. This is like an extra handing it over. And they say, well, it's opt-in. You don't have to do it. Okay, well, if you don't do it, and then all the providers begin requiring this as part of their willingness to actually take care of patients. Like, for instance, right now, if you don't have medical insurance, you will understand that there are some doctors who just aren't interested in you becoming their patient. They work with the insurance companies. That's where their profit comes from. Okay. And so you have to opt in to purchasing health insurance, unless you get it from your employer, I understand. That's an opt-in thing. But if you fail to opt in, then your access is vastly restricted. That matters. So people will be then coerced to opt in, which really isn't opting in. Okay. That's being coerced into it. And if you still resist from that point, well, your access is going to be cut off. And then you don't have any choice. So if you want access, then you must submit and comply. That's what we've seen. We've seen that pattern down countless storylines over these past few years. So, this is one of those moments that I think chimping out makes sense. I haven't seen a chimp out. Okay. And the chimp out's not, this is proof that Donald Trump is dog walking us into dystopia and the worst guy ever. It's just a situation where we have to step up and say, this is a really bad idea. Who is asking for this? It's not the patients. Amy Gleason didn't even try to claim that it was the patients. It was those companies who've been preparing to do this, but haven't had access to the data. So now they're going to get access to the data, and they're all going to agree to share this data. And now it's outside of the HIPAA privacy protections. Isn't that amazing? So now your medical data goes to other companies outside of where you wanted it. And I totally lost my train of thought. I keep looking down at like what my next thing is to like guide my transitions. And then I forget about what I was just talking about, like the point that I wanted to make to move us through there. But yeah, so about Trump, yes. I don't know how to perceive this, but I do think it's bad, and I think it should be expressed that it's bad. If there is a good argument for this, I don't know what it is. All of the language sounds like all of the other language. Talking about easing friction is exactly what we were told would be the benefit of contact tracing during COVID. And I don't know, man. If somebody out there has looked into this and thinks it's a good thing, or you have some medical experience that is so bad, like the one Amy Gleason says her daughter has had, that justifies something like this, by all means, go ahead. Again, I'm not trying to say that everything technological is bad, but we should be suspicious of all of it. Okay, I have no reason to believe that this is going to be handled any better than COVID was. It's the same people handling it, which is, the medical industrial complex. And maybe some of these things are negotiations that have to happen. Maybe they'll be reversed later. The chimp out is good. You don't need to go crazy on it. It's got to be kept in perspective. But that looks like chimp out worthy as far as I'm concerned. These are elements of the control system. Let's keep going. Speaking of those tech companies, this is from Ars Technica on July 28th. Meta pirated and seeded porn for years to train AI, lawsuit says. Porn sites may have blown up Meta's key defense in a copyright fight with book authors, who earlier this year said that Meta torrented at least 81.7 terabytes of data across multiple shadow libraries to train its AI models. So they basically went on a BitTorrent site where it's these sites where you can find various kinds of files to download, whether it's video games or movies or documents or whatever. They have a search feature. You find the thing that you want, and then you need a program like Transmission or something to download the torrent, and the torrent will basically then retrieve the data from any number of seeders who have that data available at any time. It'll download, and then you can use it. And there's no cost to it. It's kind of the piracy networks. Okay. So this is what Meta is then doing. They're downloading all of these movies, 81.7 terabytes, and images too, I'm guessing, and then using that to train AI. Meta has defeated most of the author's claims and claimed there is no proof that Meta ever uploaded pirated data through seeding or leeching on the BitTorrent network used to download training data. But authors still have a chance to prove that Meta may have profited off its massive piracy. And a new lawsuit filed by adult sites last week appears to contain evidence that could help authors win their fight. The new lawsuit was filed Friday in a U.S. District Court in California by Strike 3 Holdings, which says it attracts over 25 million monthly visitors to sites that serve as, quote unquote, ethical sources for adult videos that are, quote, famous for redefining adult content with Hollywood style and quality. Oh, yes. I'm sure that they make the best pornos. This is like Tarantino. After authors revealed Meta's torrenting, Strike 3 Holdings checked its proprietary BitTorrent tracking tools designed to detect infringement of its videos and alleged that the company found evidence that Meta has been torrenting and seeding its copyrighted content for years since at least 2018. Some of the IP addresses were clearly registered to Meta, while others appeared to be hidden, and at least one was linked to a Meta employee. And you'll see this subheadline here that the tactics may have harmed minors, and that is, they substantiate that by saying that minors were able, here it is. These tactics allegedly gave Meta several advantages, making it harder for Strike 3 Holdings sites to compete, including potentially distributing the videos to minors for free without age checks in states that now require them. So all that's saying is that they didn't apply the age checks. I don't believe that this is an example of the exploitation of minors. It's just about they've made these videos available to them to download, even in states that would require an age check. Okay. So just wanted to be clear about that. I don't think that this is the central problem here. But let's continue on in the realm of AI. Actually, let me check the chat for a second. Everybody seems to be doing okay over there. Okay, where are we? Elon on AI. And I think that this goes right in line with the medical stuff we were just talking about a second ago. This is from X, formerly Twitter. Darn it. I am going to have to, hold on for 1 second. I have to find, hold for processing. I have to find the original post from that. And I know that I have it on the Telegram, so I'm going to have to go back there for a second. Allow the Jeopardy music to play in your head while this happens. It's a grave situation we're dealing with here. Almost there, I promise. All right. The hold for processing is over. The Jeopardy music can be stopped. I have retrieved the additional tweet that I was lacking. Okay. So Doge Designer on X says there will be 2 AGIs, that's artificial general intelligence. One trained to be politically correct, one trained to be correct. So politically correct versus correct. Elon says achieving the second is shockingly hard. The training data on the internet is a steaming pile of poop emoji. Achieving the second is shockingly hard, okay? And AGI, trained to be correct, is shockingly hard. That's being said by the world's greatest super genius and richest man, blah, blah, blah. But also a defense contractor, and also just happens to be the guy that is seen as the owner of an AI company that takes all the Twitter data and tries to make something correct out of that. He says that Grok AI, XAI, is meant to be a truth-seeking device. I'm not sure that's what it is. It kind of can't be because the information stream is so polluted. But hey, you never know. Maybe they will actually summon forth this perfect demon that they are looking for, this false god that they want to create. Now, I'm not saying all of AI is necessarily that. Just saying, got to be discerning between the two things, okay? It's the idea that this is the thing that's going to create the utopia on earth versus the utopia in the spiritual realm, heaven. And that, I guess, is not utopia technically in any way, but heaven or this facsimile of heaven that they're going to create on earth once the machine can control everything and the authoritative source is widely available at all times to everyone. Okay. I said last week that AI is basically the new mainstream media. It's where everyone is getting their information. And the truth is everyone's been getting their information derived in some part, great or small, from artificial intelligence for many, many years, maybe the entirety of our internet experience. Okay. But the idea that it's really, really hard to create a truth machine, an AI that will actually be correct, that gets a little scary. The training data is bad. So the data coming in is garbage, and garbage is produced. Something we've been talking about when it comes to AI on this podcast for years. Garbage in, garbage out. Okay. It's never going to be the thing that they think it is because it's full of garbage. And the problem seems to be unresolvable. And I've said before, I think that AI is growing more retarded, or maybe it's being more restricted by the military or somebody interlinked to the military for national security purposes. If it is not able to actually produce the truth at all, then it's certainly not able to tell us the truth. And it may well be the case that truth is not the goal. It's to have a conversation that orients a certain way, and that the conversation being oriented that way will convince people to create the exact world that the regime intends. So the training data is very bad. And that is the sort of thing that's going to create great problems in situations like this one. This is the Telegraph. AI to predict prisoner attacks on officers. This from July 31st. Prison officers are to use artificial intelligence to predict and prevent violence by offenders. They will deploy AI to more accurately assess the risk that criminals pose so that they can be transferred to high security jails, segregated, or placed in special separation units. AI will also be used to uncover prisoners' secret communications by scanning the data in confiscated phones for code words and signals for drug dealing, drone drops, and threats of violence. Drone drops. Is that actually a drone being flown over a prison and whatever substance, contraband being dropped from the drone into the prison yard? That would really be something. And could that happen? Of course it could. I don't know that it does happen, but it seems like something that could happen. And when something could happen and somebody would want that thing to happen, the chance that they're trying to make that thing happen or have made it happen is probably pretty high. Okay, let's continue. AI will be used to, they are part of an action plan by ministers to embed AI in the criminal justice system, from AI assistance for all civil servants to process information and write reports to judges seeking to distill evidence and compose decisions. So the judges will be informed by AI. They will know what the right answer is because they will check with the authoritative source in every moment. And that sounds very dystopian, but it's also kind of the way our society already operates. If everyone is operating on information derived from authority, if they are failing to understand the reality show as such and believe it's all real, they believe part of that world is that the experts and the authoritative source above the experts, they are always right. And so they must always be believed at all times. And if that's the case, then they already have a systematized approach to determining what's right and wrong. They're already being guided by the information from the authoritative source. The AI then just becomes a more convenient delivery model for what was already happening. And I think that there's some reason to believe that's exactly what's going on. It comes after it emerged prison officers are still waiting for stab vests nearly 2 months after the government announced they would be issued. The decision was made after 3 officers were attacked with makeshift knives by Hashem Abedi, the Manchester Arena terrorist. Okay. So the guy that staged the Manchester arena bombing, okay, at the Ariana Grande show, in prison, makeshift knives, stabs 3 officers. All of this, of course, must be believed. And in response, we have the need now for AI to be operative in prisons. And will they have biometric scans? Will they be scanning people's eyeballs? Will they be trying to detect people's moods? Probably. That seems like that would probably be the goal. And just like we accept them using that down at the border to help prevent illegal immigration, well, makes sense to use it in the prisons too, because those are bad people and those are bad people. And so it's proper to use these tools on those bad people who are going to act out. Well, act out by what standard? The regime standard, the standards of law that we've come to understand. And we already kind of have that. So the other thing, in addition to this coercive new ability by which they train these AIs and then deploy them on everybody, once they've determined that because of their standards, everybody is doing something bad, then we're in a brave new world. And you know that they're also trying to figure out justifications for removing knives from the population because they've already removed guns, and now there are just too many knifings in their place. And so we must remove knives as well. I think right now, I actually saw an article last week, or a headline at least, that they are attempting to remove ninja swords. And I think that there was actually a headline maybe last year about that too. But it sounds like it is actually happening. And that is absolutely bonkers. Okay. Let's continue. This is from Reclaim the Net. Sam Altman pitches eyeball scanning world ID to bankers. This from July 29th. Shut out by privacy regulators skeptical of his iris scanning ID scheme, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman is taking a different route. He's now turning to the financial sector to pitch World ID, a digital identity platform built on the premise that artificial intelligence has made it impossible to tell humans from machines. It's a solution aimed at solving a problem AI itself has created. During a U.S. Federal Reserve conference focused on banking regulation, Altman framed his biometric identity project as essential for navigating a world where digital fraud is growing rapidly. He argued that most authentication systems have already been rendered ineffective. AI has fully defeated most of the ways that people authenticate. All of these fancy take a selfie, wave, or do your voice or whatever. I'm very nervous that we have a significant impending crisis. So AI is too good for the information that they used to have. They're going to need more of your information, more of your data. Eventually, they want to have everything. We worried about Real ID. This is a digital Real ID, basically. Full tracking ability for everything. The platform is marketed as a way to combat AI-enabled deception, particularly in financial systems that still rely on older biometric methods. A thing that terrifies me, he said, is apparently there are some financial institutions that will accept the voice print as authentication. That is a crazy thing to still be doing. Like AI has fully defeated that. And to be honest, that might be true. And if it's true that your voice can be replicated that perfectly through AI, if your banking institution has voice authentication as one of the key steps, well, then somebody else can authenticate your information using the AI version of your voice. So that is at least a legitimate concern. But again, when you spot a legitimate concern, the important thing is the response to it. Okay. This is not to say, well, this system at this level of convenience and efficiency destroys everyone's rights. Therefore, we cannot use this system. Instead of doing that, they say this system is a necessity because convenience and efficiency are both necessities. And therefore, we just need to give over all our data to maintain the convenience and the efficiency. That's going to go one of two ways. Okay. Those are kind of inversions of one another. We are coerced into giving up everything so that we can keep participating in the system. And there's not more than that to it. That's what it is. Let's keep going. Oop. Now we know that Elon Musk is arch enemies with Sam Altman. They used to be at OpenAI together, and then there was a betrayal or something. And now Elon Musk is the good, happy internet troll we all know and love, and Sam Altman is the man leading us into an ever greater dystopia. This is an account called Asmon Gold on X, formerly Twitter. I don't know who this is. Doesn't matter. He says, Internet real ID is inevitable, especially for social media. Denying this might feel good, but it is a lie and you know it. What isn't inevitable is private companies having access to our public records. The best solution is a government authentication token that only verifies info. And to that, Elon Musk replied, government is much worse than any corporation, or you don't understand government. Government is simply the most powerful corporation and with a monopoly on violence. Now, that last part is true. And it's maybe true that the first part is generally true. Let's say that. I don't know that government is worse than any corporation. I guess because of the size and the power, you could claim that. But I don't know if the motivation to do harm for profit is necessarily as strong in government as it is in the corporate world. And so there might be an argument along those lines. But let's just assume that what he's saying is true. If government is the most powerful corporation with a monopoly on violence, then we should not ever be for any of these situations that enable the government to have more data and more power to be able to control things, especially when it comes to all of this. Private information available to private companies, that's what can't happen now. The government is the safe place to have all that data. And that seems crazy. But he might have a point that it could be potentially theoretically the only safe place for that data to exist. Now, I don't know that that's true either, but at least that would be getting us closer to something if you were able to successfully make the argument that government of, by, and for the people is actually a good thing, and that the government, in order to maintain a stable society, needs this level of access to everyone's data. I don't think I would buy that argument either. Let's keep going. To our pals at Palantir. This is the news, I think it's a European news outlet, DW. German police expand use of Palantir surveillance software. This is from just yesterday. The surveillance software called Gotham, developed by U.S. company Palantir, is billed as an all-rounder. Gigantic amounts of data are brought together at lightning speed. It only takes a few seconds to satisfy a police officer's curiosity. name, age, address, fines, criminal record. In combination with selected cell phones and the constants of scanned social media channels, a comprehensive profile of any person appears in an instant. And if any of you have seen I think it was a Showtime show or maybe Cinemax show called Rabbit Hole, starring Kiefer Sutherland, they have a really good visual depiction of that. And, I've thought numerous times that I need to grab that video and show it on the podcast, but I don't think that I've ever done it. And I'll have to find that later. But anyhow, a great depiction of what is capable with systems that are of a certain magnitude, let's say. With the help of AI, artificial intelligence, the surveillance program developed by the U.S. technology company seems to make the dreams of police and intelligence agencies come true. 3 of Germany's 16 federal states are already using Gotham. Bavaria, Hesse, North Rhine-Westphalia, Baden-Württemberg is planning to implement it soon. Well, I guess those ones are all just implementing it soon. Sorry, I read that very awkwardly. However, according to privacy advocates and civil rights organizations, it comes with a big problem. Along with those suspected of a crime, it can also ensnare innocent people. The German nonprofit group Society for Civil Rights is fundamentally opposed to the use of programs like Palantir. That's why it's lodged a constitutional complaint against the large-scale data analysis in Bavaria. Anyone who files a complaint or who is a victim of a crime, or even just happens to be at the wrong place at the wrong time, can attract police attention with this software. According to the Berlin-based organization, such unlimited analysis of data breaches the fundamental right to informational self-determination and the confidentiality of telecommunications, which is guaranteed in the German constitution. Whoever shows up on the police radar via this so-called data mining knows nothing about it. According to current law, police in Bavaria may use the Palantir software even when there is no indication of danger. In doing so, they are ignoring standards that apply in neighboring Hesse, I'm not sure how they say it, following a successful constitutional complaint by the GFF in 2023. And we can leave it there. This sort of system also was deployed in the last few Mission Impossible movies. This level of tracking is insane. Biometrics everywhere. And again, we hear, like we heard Amy Gleason say, just like you have at TSA at the airport. And every time I'm at TSA in an airport, when I'm going through, I look all around at the ceiling, the corners of the walls to try to locate every single camera. And it is crazy how many are there. They are seeing absolutely everything from every possible angle all the time. And then we're told that the shoe bomber is the justification for that and these other airplane attacks post 9/11, post Patriot Act. Same thing as the border, same thing in the prisons. They're saying your safety right here, because if something bad happens in a plane, you're probably screwed. Your safety here is so important that we need to know absolutely everything about you. So they have your real ID, and in the barcode of real ID, it can contain medical information and the rest of it. Now we're going to have a world ID that contains all the information on that app. And all of this stuff will work seamlessly. You'll just move from one to the next, checking in at every location. Friction will be reduced and you will be happy. You will own nothing, not even your data, not even your own personal information, and you will be happy because they will have fixed all of your problems. Everything worldly that has ever gone wrong, they've got it covered. It's going to be the greatest thing ever. That's how it's displayed to us, at least. That's how they tell it to us. Let's keep going. couple more on Palantir just quickly, because we've been paying a lot of attention to Palantir over the last couple of years. I think it is extremely worthwhile to do that, understanding that they create systems like this under the U.S. Department of Defense. Okay? Is it the military industrial complex, or is it the white hats in the background? Do you want to give over your power and betting that it's all just the white hats in the background? That's one of the questions we really have to ask ourselves when it comes to stuff like this. Okay? Are these people fighting against the global regime, or are they just implementing the global regime agenda? Are we being great reset? Like as a verb, it's happening to us. They are resetting us. Maybe. Once they get all your data, it's certainly down that path. Is it all the way down that path? I don't know. Can it be hijacked and we see a divergence so that there is decentralized protection over all that data, and you are the only person that has access to it because it's protected, maybe behind a wall of energy? Hat tip, Bitcoin, hat tip, Jason Lowery. Could be that. I want to believe, and want to, I think is the right way to say it. I do believe, but part of my believing is also wanting to believe that these things are not going the worst possible direction, because I don't think I want to live in that world. But maybe that's just the condition of our world, and we shouldn't be focused on this world in the first place. But man, oh man, some of this stuff is clearly going down the wrong path. Palantir gets $10 billion contract from U.S. Army. This is the Washington Post, and I think that this was, it doesn't say the date here. It says yesterday, but that, I believe, is only on the archived version. I think that this is a few days old. The U.S. Army issued Palantir a contract Thursday worth up to $10 billion over the course of the next decade. The new contract, the largest ever awarded to the software and data analysis company, cements Palantir's role as major processor of data for the military. It comes on the heels of an additional $795 million the military allocated earlier this year to put into its artificial intelligence targeting software, Maven Smart System. The new enterprise agreement, according to an Army statement, marks a significant shift in the Army's software purchasing practices and, quote, establishes a comprehensive framework for the Army's future software and data needs, end quote. The Army said the new agreement would consolidate existing software contracts and lead to significant cost efficiencies across mission-critical programs. So yes, the control mechanism will be strengthened, but costs will be lower. Again, we talked about this back during the beginning of the Doge period. Wanting an efficient government doesn't get us all the way there, okay? Having a massive, sprawling government that is efficient, that makes the trains run on time, that's not the goal. The goal is to have the minimal government interference while creating the society that we believe we are creating, according to those founding ideals on personal liberty, okay, and true representation and the rest of it. Now, maybe that's all a myth, but if it is all a myth, it's still a goal worth pursuing because it is theoretically possible, even if it never actually existed. So we should still be looking to go in that direction. The streamlined approach reduces procurement timelines, ensuring soldiers have rapid access to cutting-edge data, integration, analytics, and AI tools, the statement said. Palantir, co-founded by billionaire Peter Thiel, CEO Alex Karp, and three others, with an expressly patriotic mission shortly after 9/11, has been on a tear throughout Washington in recent months, garnering new business at seven federal agencies. The shift is driven in part by the Trump administration's focus on AI and on shifting government activities toward commercial companies. Is all of it a rug? Could be. Is the whole AI thing a rug? It's possible. And if it is, then Trump's support for AI will also be a rug. And all of these things will be a rug as well. So I guess we're just going to have to wait and see. We're going to keep tracking the Palantir thing because I really do think that it is important and that we have to keep an eye on that. But it is occasionally not bright and sunny news from Palantir. And, you know, you chimp out, but you don't simp out. We don't need to get upset at the whole thing. We don't need to believe that our lives are spinning out into the abyss. But it's worth expressing the principles that we hold about personal freedom and privacy and the rest of it. It's okay to assert those principles. And if Donald Trump is who we believe him to be, then he needs us to be doing that. One more on Palantir. Palantir tops $1 billion in revenue for the first time. Boosts guidance. That's market guidance. Palantir topped Wall Street's estimates Monday, surpassing $1 billion in quarterly revenue for the first time and hiking its full-year guidance. Shares rallied 3% after the bell. Here's how the company did versus LSEG estimates. The artificial intelligence, 16 cents adjusted versus 14 cents expected, 1 billion versus 940 million expected. The artificial intelligence software provider's revenues grew 48% during the period. Analysts hadn't expected the $1 billion revenue benchmark from the Denver-based company until the fourth quarter of this year. We're planning to grow our revenue while decreasing our number of people, CEO Alex Karp told CNBC's Morgan Brennan in an interview. This is a crazy, efficient revolution. The goal is to get 10x revenue and have 3,600 people. We now have 4,800. Now, maybe those 500 people are bad guys, or maybe they are just made into redundancies by the advance of technology. Let's leave it there. We don't need to go deep into Palantir's financials, but they are becoming more powerful over time. That is what we are being told, at least. Let's switch gears a little bit to some of the domestic politics over the last week or so. Not week, 6 days. I misspoke. Fed Governor Kugler is resigning, giving Trump a nominee on committee that sets interest rates. Federal Reserve Governor Adriana Kugler, announced Friday she is stepping down from her role at the central bank, creating an important vacancy at a time when President Donald Trump is pushing for lower interest rates. In a letter addressed to Trump, Kugler, 55, did not state a reason for her decision to leave, only noting that she will be returning to Georgetown University as a professor in the fall. She said it was in honor of a lifetime. Kugler's term was set to expire at the end of January 2026. The Biden nominee, she joined the Board of Governors in September 2023, filling the unexpired term of Lael Brainerd, who served as a Biden economic advisor. As governor, Kugler was a permanent voter on the rate-setting Federal Open Market Committee. Her resignation now paves the way for Trump to put his own nominee in for the board. Two of his prior appointments, Christopher Waller and Michelle Bowman, voted against the decision at Wednesday's meeting to hold the Fed's key rate steady, instead indicating they wanted to lower. Kugler was absent for the vote. Trump alleged without proof that Kugler resigned over a disagreement with Powell on interest rates. Trump added that he was very happy about having a Fed vacancy to fill. Now, Scott Bessent, in a clip that I played on this podcast a few weeks ago, talked about how the new Federal Reserve chair might get appointed in the January 2026 appointment rather than when Powell leaves his position in May of 2026. So now that potential for Trump to place the next Federal Reserve chair in place, the timeline on that has been moved from January 2026 to August of 2025. That's a big difference. That's about 5 months. So that's significant. And so we could see Trump placing the next, potential Federal Reserve chair in place in the next few weeks. We're going to talk about the nomination process for Trump's nominees in a little bit. But theoretically, at least, he can choose this new person, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in just a second. This is Donald Trump on Truth Social. Too late Powell should resign, just like Adriana Kugler, a Biden appointee, resigned. She knew he was doing the wrong thing on interest rates. He should resign also. So he's saying that Kugler disagreed with Powell's decision to keep the rates the same, along with the other two Trump nominees. So Biden was never a real president. Who knows what that means for Kugler and what her status ultimately is. But the date has been scaled up. I haven't seen anywhere an explanation for that resignation, but Trump has put out his explanation for it, which is that she knew Powell was doing a bad thing. That's why she resigned. Very odd, because that would be aligning, one would suspect, with Trump's position. Maybe she wanted it to be increased. I don't know. This is from Politico just yesterday. Have to make sure I'm in the right place. There we are. Trump rules Bessent out for Fed chair. Actually, this is from this morning. President Donald Trump on Tuesday said Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent will not be the next chair of the Federal Reserve. Trump, in an interview on CNBC's Squawk Box, said Bessent told him Monday evening that he does not want the job as central bank head and intends to remain Treasury Secretary. Okay, so what does that mean for this next nominee? We're going to have to wait and see. The president has been mulling replacements for current Fed chair Jerome Powell, who he's been feuding with for weeks as he aggressively pushes banks to lower interest rates. But it won't be Scott, is what we're saying. I love Scott, but he wants to stay where he is, Trump said. He's doing a great job, and he wants to do what he's doing. Trump did, however, reiterate that National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett and former Fed board member Kevin Warsh remain on his short list to run the central bank. He also said that he is considering two other individuals, though he did not name them or clarify if current Fed board member Chris Waller is on the list. We will leave that there. So one of the most interesting things playing out potentially behind the scenes, and we've suspected this for many years, I've mentioned many times, Joe Lang has done extensive work on this, but the idea that Trump was bringing the Fed back under Treasury in the first term. And here we see 5 years later, the conditions being set and what it looks like for public disclosure that that's what's happening. That has to happen. And I also believe that Trump has to fire Powell at some point, because that's the only way to prove to the American people that the president actually does oversee the Federal Reserve, and it's not the other way around where Donald Trump is owned by the central banks. I think we're going to have to see a Powell firing at some point. Bessent was talked about as the replacement chair. That would have been a big signal that the Fed was being brought back under Treasury. He would then be controlling both things. And because he's in that position, and because I believe that is what's happening, he doesn't actually need to be on the Fed Board of Governors. And so he's going to stay in this position where he is. Maybe they hoped he was going to be moved onto the Fed's Board of Governors. I don't know. Maybe he will be moved later. Sounds like right now we're probably not going to get that selection. Maybe Trump's just using misdirection, and we will see Bessent, and then Bessent will become chair in May of 2026 or whatever. While we're on the subject of the country's finances, this is from CNBC. EU will delay planned U.S. tariffs for 6 months to allow for trade talks. And so we talked about the deal that was made by Ursula von der Leyen last week. This article is from just yesterday. Trump basically owned the Europeans on that deal, and we read some of the fallout and the reaction from that. This picture is hilarious for those of you watching the video. Ursula von der Leyen looks a bit forlorn, 1,000-yard stare at the floor, and Trump is smiling gleefully in his chair. The European Union announced Monday that it will suspend for 6 months its planned countermeasures against the United States tariffs, which were set to take effect this week, and they did on August 1st. On July 27, 2025, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and U.S. President Donald Trump agreed to a deal on tariffs and trade, the EU Commission spokesperson for trade said in a statement. Spokesperson touted the agreement as restoring stability and predictability for citizens and businesses on both sides of the Atlantic. The EU continues to work with the U.S. to finalize a joint statement as agreed on July 27th. With these objectives in mind, the Commission will take the necessary steps to suspend by 6 months the EU's countermeasures against the U.S., which were due to enter into force on 7 August. So a little cherry on the top of that trade cake. Hold for processing for just a moment. While we are on the subject of trade, this was the headline from CNN. I just want to check the date here. Yeah, this is from the 31st of July. And CNN is doing this strange thing to their website where this gray layer now appears before their archived links. How Trump used America's leverage to get exactly what he wanted from his trade war. How about that for a CNN headline? Trump got exactly what he wanted. He won the trade war. It says in the end, President Donald Trump got exactly what he wanted. The 120 days since Trump's Rose Garden Liberation Day announcement rocked financial markets weren't exactly pretty. So I guess the announcement rocked financial markets. That was always a bullshit story. We've talked about that countless times on this podcast. These are story layer explanations for what's happening underneath. The markets are heavily manipulated. The markets are heavily dependent on the Magnificent Seven stocks. So all this stuff is in the realm of nonsense. From Washington to Wall Street and across foreign capitals far and wide, seemingly every day featured a disorienting burst of tacos. Trades based on the notion that Trump always chickens out. And we talked about this briefly a few weeks ago, maybe months ago. And turbulence, theater, and threats, carve-outs, and looming fear of an imminent rupture to the backbone of 70 years of global commerce. And they say Trump always chickens out. Well, I don't think that's what he's doing. I think he's setting at a point far in the distance and then understanding he's going to get halfway there each time. Sets it out, settles for something lower. They always say that it's Trump chickening out or reversing his policy. But it seems like he's in exactly the place he needs to be every one of these times. Okay, we always see these stories where one Trump position, good or bad, comes out, is accepted, and then a few weeks later, no one believes that position anymore. It's something else. And we've actually reduced that time from months or years down to days or weeks, and sometimes it's hours, where some terrible headline comes out, everybody chimps out, the good people and the bad people. And then it turns out that the thing everyone was concerned about isn't actually happening. And what that is only an information operation that is potentially designed to coerce belief and conformity to a new public consensus. But that's not the only reason. Even today, an explicit declaration of victory would seem short-sighted in the face of economic data that has presented a steady stream of contradictory signals and warning signs that in many ways mirror the disorienting nature of a trade policy without modern historical precedent. The executive authority Trump triggered to underpin a wide swath of his tariffs faces an acute risk in court. Trump's tariff approach remains deeply unpopular in public polling. And again, bullshit layer after bullshit layer. We're going to leave this here because in the interest of time, I want to move to other subjects. But it is now just part of the central narrative that Trump has won the trade war. That's pretty substantial. Now, you might say that that's part of the Great Reset agenda, that the fragmentation of the control over the global economy is part of the agenda, or maybe they have a way to stop that. But it doesn't seem like it. It seems like full control over the global economy in the creation of that one world centralized state is the goal. So something that is obliterating the possibility of that goal being achieved doesn't seem like an enemy operation, as far as I'm concerned. And, you know, in the future, we could be wrong about everything. It's always the risk, but doesn't seem to be the case. Okay, let me organize here for a moment and take a peek at the chats. Okay. Let's go here. This is one of the big stories of the weekend and beyond. This is from NBC News. Texas Democrats decamp to Illinois to deny Republicans a quorum on redistricting. And this is from Sunday. A showdown over redistricting in Texas played out here on Sunday as dozens of state Democrats took refuge roughly 1,000 miles away from home, saying they had fled Texas to deny a quorum to Republican efforts to add as many as 5 congressional seats to their map. It culminated with the Texas governor, a Republican, that's Greg Abbott, threatening to expel Democrats from the state house and potentially extradite them, saying they may be felons. And that is in process. The last I saw updated. If someone has an update from today that I missed or this afternoon because it just happened, by all means, let me know in the chat. So we saw this exact tactic deployed during the kind of more intense COVID period. I remember them all being on a jet in their masks, fleeing, I think, to New York, if I recall. Maybe it says in this article. I should go down further. I just really wanted the short summary here. Pardon me for 1 second. Let me see. Wow, they did not even... Did they really not mention it the entire time? Perhaps not. Okay, so this is a tactic they've deployed before. It's very interesting that we're seeing something that happened a few years ago happen now. There was absolutely no accountability in that period. And now we have the potential, at least, for accountability, or so we are told. And Greg Abbott is being presented as doing heroic things because of this redistricting, because the conning influencers are certain still that the most important thing in the world is to have Republicans win fake elections so that we can then put in the agenda that's going to save America. And so Greg Abbott redistricting in Texas is meant to save America. We're going to have 5 extra House seats. That means we're going to win the House in 2026 in the midterms, those real elections that are going to happen then. In response to that, Gavin Newsom said this.
Or are you willing to go to stop Trump from stealing the midterms?
What's so interesting about how blue that is, that was done by an independent redistricting commission. That's the difference. We tried to play by a higher value system. It's about formal authority. It's also about moral authority. We tried to do both and.
Yeah.
I've long supported independent redistricting. I can't stand these gerrymandered districts. I can't stand the fact that we're trying to find, it's, everything about gerrymandering needs to be addressed nationally.
Yep.
And I now realize that as a promoter to do it at the state level, I thought other states would follow suit because it was the right thing to do. They didn't.
No.
And so we've unilaterally disarmed. Democrats can't just sit there and act holier than thou and watch this democracy completely be degraded, watch the rule of law degraded, watch a system of co-equal branches of government completely devastated and rolled back in real time by Trump and Trumpism. So we're going to stand up. That district, likely this state, the blue, will get even darker blue. As we respond to Abbott, we respond to Donald Trump, and we assert ourselves much more aggressively. And that, your prior question, the prior question of that, and this damn question, Democrats need to stop the bullshit. It's a different day. Stop. We're on our heels on everything. They're shape-shifting everything. They're winning the messaging war.
We are winning the messaging war. There's no doubt about that. But what Gavin is describing is the problem with this situation. California is just going to do the same thing that Texas and Florida do. And we're told that Texas and Florida are heroic because these are Republicans and the Democrats are going to do it. And then the Democrats will be able to win the House because they're going to have more seats from this redistricting. Gavin wants a federal government solution to redistricting, to, I guess, drawing the congressional maps. Why would that be a good thing? States aren't allowed to determine what regions in a given state have a congressional district there. It's supposed to be based on population. We're told that's what it is. Population statistics are bullshit, and there's no reason to believe that the system is functioning properly as it's supposed to, or as we're told that it is supposed to. Okay, but California and New York, the populations added together, and again, population statistics are bullshit, but that's about 59 million. I think that's what it was. I looked this up yesterday. Texas and Florida adds to somewhere around 55 million. So if we assume that just California and New York and Texas and Florida do this redistricting, you've got the same result in both places. Okay, it cancels each other out. They've got roughly the same populations. It's not going to change. We're just going to have one state for two states in this example, but let's just say 1-to-1 for now. We're going to have one state, Texas, redistricting to favor Republicans. Another state will redistrict to favor Democrats in the same way. And then we haven't even actually won the House. Now, it might be possible that redistricting has to happen if we are going to continue with this form of government at all. But if it does, something that has to happen before that is to remove all of the illegal aliens from the population statistics so that California doesn't end up with 27 extra representatives because they have doubled their population through illegal immigration and the employment of slave labor to California businesses. That can't happen. If that problem was corrected in California, it would have to be corrected in Texas and Florida. Because Texas and Florida have tons of illegal aliens. Texas has an unbelievable number of illegal aliens. Everybody thinks Texas is like this very independent state that doesn't go along with the Uniparty agenda or the regime agenda at all. That ain't true. I wish it was true, but it's not true. And, that we hear stories all the time about how the Democrats run the state house and Abbott allowed all of the purchases by China and others of land in Texas. And we'll see how all that shakes out with the land purchases. I'm open to believing that Abbott is a good guy and just doing what he's supposed to do, or maybe making the argument in response to something the Democrats were going to do. This is just part of the info war, interacting with it as though it's real seems like the wrong way to go because each side cancels the other out. But again, there's an adjustment that needs to be made. Perhaps there's another census taken. That seems like it might happen. or we will hear that the 2020 census has been cured in some way because they knew how many illegal aliens were in there. I don't think that's possible. Trump was, although it might be, and here's why. Trump was contesting this all the way up to the Supreme Court about whether or not illegal aliens could be counted in the census. And we were told that the decision never went ultimately in Trump's direction. Something like that has to happen at some point. And this seems to be a plausible narrative delivery system for that happening. And so we need to be sure that that's what it is and that we're not just getting hoodwinked. Okay. It's good to think redistricting definitely needs to happen. There are a lot of representatives that these other states have based on illegal alien populations. And so maybe Texas is just removing that. It's possible California's removing that too. Our boy knew, who knows? But the redistricting thing is going to be really interesting if it goes to that level, because the vision of what America is and what the American government has done over generations, if, for instance, there are 250 million Americans and not the 340 or whatever bullshit number they tell us of total people, not just Americans, but illegals too. If that would mean that there are, according to our population statistics that they use for all these various purposes, there are 80, 90 million additional people counted who shouldn't be. That's going to change the system broadly and drastically. Okay. California and Texas and Florida and New York and Illinois and some of these major population centers, Georgia maybe, they would have their relative power reduced compared to those smaller states. Because if the smaller states don't have extraordinary illegal immigration problems, then their representation would remain level or increase as the representation of these big population states decreases based on the fact that they don't have the illegal aliens there anymore. And the entire electoral map changes. The whole red-blue thing, I mean, at that point, that's going to change a lot. But we are working toward the situation where Americans will actually understand what their country is. And it seems to be progressing. And I hope that that is what is ultimately the purpose of most of this, and that we really are headed in those directions. But you got to be ever watchful. Let's pause for just a second here. I'm going to check the chat, and then we will keep moving into other domains. I missed a Rumble rant earlier. She's so right. Beth said for $5. Thank you. Thank you for solving my problem and paying me for your ability to do that. Chris, the word is hamster wheel. Take another round on a hamster wheel. Oh, PJ put it in the chat. Okay, thanks, PJ. Thanks, Beth. Beth got my attention. PJ answered the question. Beth also gifted 5 subscriptions, so thank you very much for that. Hamster wheel. So dumb. What did I say? Mouse wheel? John Drake, $10. Every dystopian movie features near total central data control. Hard to imagine such TCDC not being dystopian as a result, but APL will save us. Well, she might. Congratulations to her, and congratulations to John Drake for giving us all the opportunity. Kank, 1960, $20. Thanks for all you do, Chris, from both myself and APL. Well done. What are you going to do? Okay. Let us continue on. Pardon for 1 second. Just a brief hold for processing here. I'm trying to make sure that something is set up properly. Wow. Let's do a quick Rumble ad while we're in a pause, and we will come back to our regularly scheduled programming. When Rumble first started in 2013, they built a platform for the small creator. They didn't censor or have biases. They were fair and treated all creators equally. No one thought platforms would censor political conversations or censor opinions on COVID, but they did. Facebook admitted they fell to pressure from the Biden and Harris administration. Rumble did not. They held the line. They are attacked daily for giving us a voice to talk to you. They are attacked in corporate media. They are attacked by governments like France and Brazil. They are attacked from brand advertisers who refuse to work with them. Corporate America is fighting to remove speech. Rumble is fighting to keep it. Rumble won't survive with the brand advertisers. They don't get much of it. Watching our show on Rumble is the most they can ask from you. But if you really believe in this fight and you have the means, one major way you can help Rumble survive is by joining Rumble Premium. Join the community that believes in the First Amendment and believes in our human right to free speech. Rumble is offering $10 off with the promo code STUDIO when you purchase an annual subscription. Go to rumble.com/premium and use promo code STUDIO. Like I said, if you have the means and believe in the cause, now is the time to join Rumble. And Friday's episode will be for paid Substack subscribers who, if they want to watch on Rumble and have Rumble Premium, they can do that. But Rumble Premium is the only way to watch Friday's show on Rumble. Otherwise, if you're a paid subscriber, just go to Substack and watch on Substack. Substack's live viewing feature is at this point equivalent to any other video app you might be using. Substack's app, I think, has had a lot of money put into it over the past year, and it has gotten very, very good in its functionality and extremely still annoying in the feed that the algorithm provides. There are a lot of attention farmers on there, and nobody likes attention farmers. Okay. Let us quickly go here just for this story so that we can notice the important similarities between the situation in the United States and the situation in Brazil on a 2-year delayed timeline. U.S. condemns Brazil Supreme Court order for house arrest for ex-president Jair Bolsonaro. And we are now moving into the Mar-a-Lago raid phase of Brazilian devolution. Now, we can quibble about the devolution term, but something is definitely happening in the background. And that something mirrors almost exactly what happened here after the stolen election of 2020. It happened 2 years later in Brazil, and now Brazilian Joe Biden, Lula da Silva, is the quote-unquote president of Brazil. They are shutting down free speech, just like happened here. They had a January 6th Reichstag fire on January 8th, just like happened there. The same thing in both places. And now we have the arrests of that quote-unquote former president down in Brazil. And so we're seeing the same plot points hit in both situations, and we're supposed to pretend all of it is real. It's not. It's one program versus another program. The Brazilian Supreme Court has ordered the house arrest of former President Jair Bolsonaro, who's on trial over an alleged plot to overturn the results of the 2022 presidential election. So literally the exact same thing. Justice Alexander de Moraes issued the order on Monday saying Bolsonaro had failed to comply with restrictions previously imposed on him by the court, including the use of social media and cell phones. So he wouldn't silence himself, therefore he is arrested. The order said Bolsonaro recorded speeches to be posted on other users' social media accounts in which his ankle monitor is visible, which Moraes said defied an order prohibiting exploitation of interviews or public or private speeches posted on third-party social media. Bolsonaro will serve house arrest at his residence and will not be allowed to have visitors except for his attorneys and people authorized by the court. And the U.S. has since sanctioned Alexander de Moraes. Slap on the wrist. He's a very bad boy who looks like Destro from G.I. Joe and gets in big fights with Elon Musk. Let's knock out some more political stuff. Let's see how far we can get. We'll go a little long today because we haven't been around, or I haven't been around. I don't need to speak in the royal we. This is Melania Trump on X, formerly Twitter. Daily Beast apologizes and retracts article alleging a Melania Trump Jeffrey Epstein link. And we can go to that article in the New York Post, but I just wanted to point out that Melania herself was posting that. Here's the headline from the New York Post referencing the Daily Beast. The Daily Beast took down an article Thursday alleging a modeling agent connected to notorious sex predator Jeffrey Epstein introduced Melania Trump to her husband, President Trump. The article, which detailed claims made by author Michael Wolff on a Daily Beast podcast, was replaced with an editor's note apologizing for any confusion after the First Lady's lawyers contacted the lefty outlet. After the story was published, the Beast received a letter from First Lady Melania Trump's attorney challenging the headline and framing of the article, read the editor's note. After reviewing the matter, the Daily Beast has taken down the article and apologizes for any confusion or misunderstanding. But of course, just like with the Trump Epstein files stuff, once the story goes out widely, people will believe it. Even if they don't believe it, they will repeat it. And so they're trying to malign the relationship of Donald and Melania Trump. That is very low grade. And it would be better if we didn't have a society that operated that way, but we do. And that is how our media wages the information war. Here is a headline from ABC News today. Grand jury transcripts in Ghislaine Maxwell case contain nothing new, DOJ filing says. So we were told that there was nothing new in the FBI files, in the Epstein files, I should say, FBI and intelligence, whatever. We were not going to get the damning information that we thought we were going to get. And so then Trump directed the DOJ to ask for the grand jury transcripts. Now we're being told that there's nothing in the grand jury transcripts either. And people are beginning on like Newsmax and OAN are beginning to talk about, hey, maybe Ghislaine Maxwell's not what we thought she was. And people lose their minds over that stuff. It is unbelievable. They are absolutely sure that they know what's up with Ghislaine Maxwell and that they are saving the children by screaming about it online, I guess. So, much of what the Justice Department wants a federal judge to unseal from the Ghislaine Maxwell grand jury investigation is already known. And at least so far, the Attorney General is seeking to unseal nothing else, according to a new court filing Tuesday. The Justice Department turned over a version of the Maxwell grand jury transcripts that identifies which information is not already publicly known. That annotated version shows that much of the information provided during the course of the grand jury testimony, with the exception of the identities of certain victims and witnesses, was made publicly available at trial or has otherwise been publicly reported through the public statements of victims and witnesses. So, nothing in the grand jury transcripts. Nothing new, nothing important. But it sounds like we might not see them. And here is CNN's Caitlin Collins from today on X, formerly Twitter. Get that framed correctly. Ghislaine Maxwell's team has just told SDNY, Southern District of New York, it is opposed to the government's motion to unseal the grand jury transcripts, arguing that because she hasn't seen them and is, quote, actively litigating her case, end quote, it shouldn't be made public. From her filing, it says, Jeffrey Epstein is dead. Ghislaine Maxwell is not. Whatever interest the public may have in Epstein, that interest cannot justify a broad intrusion into grand jury secrecy in a case where the defendant is alive, her legal options are available, and her due process rights remain. So there is certainly an interesting and worthwhile legal issue there. But now we are being told, let me see if I can grab this really quickly. So we are not going to get the grand jury transcripts, but we might get, here we are. We might get the transcripts from the Ghislaine Maxwell interview last week. This is CNN, Trump administration debating releasing transcript of Ghislaine Maxwell interview with DOJ, sources say. And so we don't need to go too far into that, but I just wanted to substantiate it and put it in front of your eyes. Which of those two pieces of information would be more interesting? It's hard to say. Maybe there's stuff in the grand jury testimony that we're not being told about. Maybe there's really damning stuff in there. And if we don't get that grand jury transcript, we're never going to know. Possible. The grand jury transcript there is a much greater probability that the grand jury transcript is tainted by the same people who set up the Russia hoax. That whatever was in the Epstein files, for instance, Donald Trump said that there was a lot of BS in there, a lot of disinformation that had been placed in there by the enemy. So he was warning people that there's a lot of this thing that is fake. Is it possible that the same people who would have put the fake information in the Epstein files also put fake information into the grand jury transcript? Well, yeah, there's a pretty damn good chance of that. Okay. And it's 100% true if Ghislaine Maxwell is not who he thought she is. All right. So the likelihood that what we're going to get from Todd Blanche's interview with Ghislaine Maxwell, the likelihood that that is the tainted information versus the grand jury transcripts, I tend to think that it's clear that the grand jury transcripts would be more likely to be tainted, and therefore the testimony last week would be more reliable, especially if Ghislaine Maxwell is actually seeking a release or a pardon or whatever it is. So that's going to be a really interesting dynamic to see play out. I don't know how that's going to go, obviously, but if we do get the transcript from that interview, I think that's probably better than the grand jury transcripts. And the privacy issues on the grand jury transcripts, that's a road we don't need to go down right now. So we have been going between the Epstein stuff and the Russiagate stuff because they are linked partially in the way I just mentioned. The Russiagate stuff started with the fabricated Steele dossier. That was disinformation coming from the intelligence community, just entered into the political process, affecting the campaign, attempting to steal the election, attempting to undermine the transition and then the administration of Donald Trump. All of that predicated on disinformation, manipulated information by those same people. So it makes sense to think about the Epstein saga as something of a rerun in certain respects. And so I think it makes sense to think of these things in parallel. The Russia hoax, says Donald Trump on Truth Social, is now totally undisputed. The facts are all there in black and white. It is the biggest scandal in American history. The perpetrators of this crime must pay a big price. This can never be allowed to happen in our country again. This is August 1st, 2025, Friday, that Trump says this, talking about Russiagate. Let's continue with Jonathan Turley from late last week. Hold for process.
In the city tonight, this is the great reveal that John Ratcliffe was promising, and there's more to come. The important thing about this, Sean, is that it confirms things that we knew, and it gives us things that we did not know. We always knew, not always, but we knew earlier, in July 2016, Brennan briefed Obama to say that Hillary Clinton was planning to create a Russian collusion scandal for Trump to distract from her email scandal. He briefed the president on that, and then months later, he played a critical role in overruling CIA analysts and including the Steele dossier. We also know that the Clinton campaign lied to the media, denied they had funded the Steele dossier, and indeed hid that funding as legal expenses by Mark Elias, the general counsel at that time of the Clinton campaign. And all of this required this all-on-deck effort, the government, the campaign, the media. That's why when you see the reaction of the media today, it's clear that no matter what is produced, you can show a dozen heads in a duffel bag, and they're still not impressed. And the reason is that for most of the media, this is not coverage. It would be a confession. That is, if they actually cover this story, they are confessing their own role in what may be the greatest political hit job in history.
It's good stuff. Trump reposted that video on Truth Social. That's what's being fed into the normie layer now. We can have the discussion about whether waking up the normies is the point or not. But regardless of whether or not the normies are capable of waking up and whether or not that happens, we still have consensus shifting in a major way about a very important subject, because I think that the public acceptance of the fact that Hillary Clinton tried to steal the 2016 election will be the sort of thing that leads people to understand that Joe Biden did steal the 2020 election. And we're going to talk about elections in just a second. This is, while we're still on the topic, this is Hans Menke on Russiagate with a very concise summary. He says, this is the official version of how we supposedly, quote unquote, know Russia hacked the DNC. Yes, it really went like this. Step one, Democrat operatives at CrowdStrike say that it was Russia. Under oath, they admit they don't know. Number two, the FBI said it was Russia because CrowdStrike said so. Number three, the intelligence community says it was Russia because the FBI said so. CrowdStrike says it was Russia because, this is number four, CrowdStrike says it was Russia because the intelligence community said so. So you can see that it is circular claims from authority, okay? CrowdStrike, they're the technicians, they're the experts, and yes, they are pro-regime, but they say it's Russia. Then the FBI takes CrowdStrike's word for it and says, yep, it was Russia. Then the intelligence community takes the FBI's word for it and says, yep, it was Russia. And then CrowdStrike is like, yeah, they all agree. It's amazing. And people still believe that, of course. You know, on the other side of things, it's the Seth Rich story. And I hope that we get some resolution on that story at some point in the future. You know, all of these, it's like, we know that this is coming at some point. Do we? Could be a rug. Could be a lot of rugs. We know that there are certain things that are going to happen, assuming that things are headed in our direction as we believe they are. But man, I don't know about that one. We better get there. Will Hillary be pursued for election fraud? Here is this. This is Donald Trump.
Hillary Clinton finally be investigated for election fraud.
I hope so. I hope so. I don't know whether or not that'll happen, but I hope so. Mr. President, why did you fire the head of...
Will Hillary Clinton be investigated for election fraud? Trump says, I hope so. Russiagate is moving into election territory. And we had some election stories from last week. This is the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. State Election Board returns to 2020 election and seeks help from Trump's DOJ. 3 right-wing members of the State Election Board revived a fight over the 2020 presidential election Wednesday and called for President Donald Trump's Justice Department to intervene. The surprise move by the Republican board members, the same 3 praised by Trump as pit bulls during a campaign rally last fall, gives new life to skepticism of the president's narrow loss in Georgia in 2020. Yeah, sure. He narrowly lost Georgia. While many elected Republicans in Georgia have said they want to move on from 2020 after Trump's undisputed win last year, the state election board remains focused on its questions about Fulton County's handling of the 2020 recount. Why do elected Republicans in Georgia want to move on from our stolen elections? Gosh, it's a mystery. Although multiple recounts, state investigations, and court cases, blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's in the interest of time, we'll leave that there. There is a video from that event. Here we are.
I think this is unfortunate that we have to take this step, but when you subpoena, when you ask repeatedly, and there's no resolve, we're almost left to take the necessary step. And so I fully support it. I hate that we're in this position. I wish that our subpoena would have just been answered. We're simply asking to see documents that should be available. And again, it's unfortunate that it has to come to this.
It is unfortunate that it has to come to this, but I think John and I talked about this briefly on Saturday. When information can't be retrieved, the surface interpretation is to think, oh, the regime has control of this information and it's being held back from the people on our side who need to use it to fix these problems. And that's an entirely rational response. And it may well be true. But it also might be the case that that information is being used elsewhere in court cases. Maybe it's still cordoned off for something happening at the Supreme Court for the last 5 years, or through any one of these other legal efforts to resolve the 2020 election. Maybe that information isn't available, not because the bad guys are holding it, but because the good guys are holding it, and it can't be disclosed. Just saying a possibility. That's all. Okay, I don't know that to be the case. But that seems to be the case that seems to be the pattern that fits other stories as well, like the information from the J6 committee just all being lost. Okay. I mean, last week we were told that they found all these files in burn bags. The bad guys were going to burn all of this information, but somehow they didn't. And now we have it. It's in the burn bags still. We just found it. Pretty silly, honestly, if you ask me. Here is one of our favorite panickers. He's not a pannikin, because I think pannikins are on. I think pannikins are like the rhino Republicans who freak out about everything. They chimp out in a stupid way. Simp out. Here is Mark Elias, one of the true villains.
On the other side.
Oh, it's happening everywhere. I mean, the fact is, Donald Trump and the vote suppressors, the election deniers, they look at the results of 2024 and they say, we won, right? We accomplished what we wanted to accomplish. And so, sure, they didn't have to actually steal any elections for president after 2024 because Donald Trump won the popular vote and won the Electoral College. But they then rolled that out in North Carolina to try to do just that. And they are quite emboldened. You know, they view North Carolina not as a defeat, but as a lesson learned for the tactics that are working and the tactics that need to be improved. They look at their voter challenge program in states like Georgia, again, as tactics that they will refine as we move forward to Senator Ossoff's re-election there. And it is happening in every state in the country. I mean, there is not a state in the country in which Republicans and the RNC and the right-wing, vast right-wing dark money groups funded by billionaires are not active. I mean, I see them in court. My law firm and we are in 50 lawsuits in more than 25 states. Like, we're in half the country. The RNC, by the way, is litigating 75 lawsuits in 40 some odd states. I mean, there's a lot of going on here. And from the Republican standpoint, they are emboldened. They think they have the courts at their back. They have the president with executive orders. They've got a grassroots army of vote suppressors. They've got a team full of election deniers in local and county boards. So we all need to buckle up and be ready to fight back.
Sure, Mark, get ready. It seems like the nation's about to find out. I don't mean to be too optimistic about that, okay? When I say about to find out, I mean we're in the process, step by step, of this narrative progressing. You could make the argument that that's been happening for years, and I think that would be a fair argument. So, you know, I try to not be too hopeful about these things because so many of them are rugs, but the public exposure between the Russiagate thing and the element of the Democrat Party attempting to steal that election, that opens the door for a story like this to be more effective, a story like the one about election fraud, I should say. Liz Harrington, Trump's former spokesperson, I should say, talked about some of this. Wait, hold on a moment. Did I lose my Liz Harrington? I just go through too many shows. Here it is.
Maybe this is stuff we already knew, but it's new documents. It is absolutely new evidence, and it ties Barack Obama directly to the center of it all. And that is huge. That cannot be overstated. Of course, when you were watching it unfold before your eyes, you knew what was happening. You knew this was a lie. You knew Barack Obama was lying about Russia and what they were trying to suggest. At first it was fake news, and then it was Russia to explain away their historic defeat. But it goes so much deeper. And I think the documents that were even more coming out now, you really see that this was all connected with Hillary, with the spying illegally that they did on President Trump and his campaign. This was the insurance policy. This was, I saw a presentation years ago from the CrowdStrike CEO, and he basically laid it out exactly what they do. And this is what he said. He said, the best defense is a good offense. And that is exactly what they've done this entire time. They've turned their weakness into false accusations against their opponents. And they ran with it. And there needs to be consequences. This was a seditious conspiracy. This was treason. They not only tried to steal the election, then they stole the next one. So that can't be lost in any of this either.
It's a damn good point. And you see her there tying Russiagate directly to the election and not only to the 2016 election, of course, but to the 2020 election. You just have to hope things are actually picking up steam and we're not just being lulled to sleep forever. Donald Trump went off on Democrats over the weekend. He's been trying to get these nominees approved before the Senate took a recess. And he said this on Truth Social on Saturday. He actually had a series of a few posts just going off on Democrats. He said Senator Crying Chuck Schumer is demanding over $1 billion in order to approve a small number of our highly qualified nominees who should right now be helping to run our country. This demand is egregious and unprecedented and would be embarrassing to the Republican Party if it were accepted. It is political extortion, any other name. Tell Schumer, who is under tremendous political pressure from within his own party, the radical left Democrats, to go to hell. Do not accept the offer. Go home and explain to your constituents what bad people the Democrats are and what a great job the Republicans are doing and have done for our country. Have a great recess and make America great again. So he is accusing Chuck Schumer of attempting to extort $1 billion to get his whatever members of his caucus to go along with the approval of these nominees. He wants to be paid off. I talked about this on Saturday on Devolution Power Hour. Is this just how the system has always worked? Are we being shown and told how the system has always worked? That people were running a pay-for-play scheme when it comes to votes for presidential nominations? It's entirely possible. There's no reason to believe it doesn't happen. There's pay-for-play schemes in all of these government activities, in the passage of laws. He kept going. The Democrats are extortionists who almost destroyed our country. Now we are back, and the USA is the quote-unquote hottest country anywhere in the world. Make America great again. Donald Trump also had a banger of a post yesterday about this whole Sydney Sweeney thing, talking about how Taylor Swift is no longer hot, just no longer hot because she was woke. And it didn't work. She got booed out of the Super Bowl. It didn't work for Jaguar. It didn't work for Bud Light. Woke is dead. And Sydney Sweeney is hot like America. I cannot believe that ends up being part of the Nazi job. Everything is Nazis except for Nazis. And the fact that that is a plausible interpretation of how that issue is treated in public should be proof that it has been inverted successfully. Everyone is a Nazi except for the Nazis. Oh my gosh. Yeah, the neocons, for instance, they could never be the bad guys. It's never them. Democrats led by Crying Chuck Schumer are slow walking my nominees, more than 150 of them. They want us to pay originally $2 billion for approvals. The Dems are crazed lunatics. That's Trump on Truth Social from Sunday. So they initially wanted $2 billion, and now they want $1 billion? Maybe they'll get it down to nothing. That would be a hell of a negotiation. Where are we here? Donald Trump followed up. Oh, darn it. I'm pretty sure he followed up today. Hold on, let me find this. I used the same link twice, and then I totally confused myself. It's never good when you're rugging yourself. I should make up a word for that. When I think about you, I rug myself. Oh, where is it? I don't know where it is. We're just going to move on, I think. But he has continued to go off about the extortion scheme. But at the same time, he was supporting the Republicans in the House and Senate on that issue, trying to make sure that everybody knew he was on board with the Republican thing. Because if the Republicans do a bad thing, well, then that could be used against Trump, okay? Understanding the dynamics of these info ops, Trump now has a defense set up He's totally on board with these two Republican leaders. He says, very proud of our great Republican senators for fighting over the weekend and far beyond, if necessary, in order to get my great appointments approved and on their way to helping us make America great again. The radical left Democrat senators are doing everything possible to delay these wonderful and talented people from being approved. If George Washington or Abraham Lincoln were up for approval, the Dems would delay as long as possible, then vote them out. The Democrats want our country to fail because they have failed. Thank you to Senator John Thune and our Republican warriors in the Senate. Fight and win. I am with you all the way. He demanded, actually on Friday, I got this out of order. He said on Thursday, the Senate must stay in session, taking no recess until the entire executive calendar is clear. We have to save our country from the lunatic left. Republicans, for the health and safety of the USA, do your job and confirm all nominees. They should not be forced to wait. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Okay, so since then, we have heard that we are going to have what is known as a pro forma recess, which means that the Senate will be, or that the House and Senate will be called back into session for a meeting that takes no time. They open the meeting, they close the meeting, no business is discussed, but it means it's not the same sort of recess that would allow Trump to make recess appointments. Now, to spin that around in a potential good way, consider the response on the other side if Trump was making recess appointments for everyone that was serving for all of these people that were serving in his administration. If he just made all of these as recess appointments. Now, maybe that's a worthy battle to have in the information war, but the response would be severe. It would be portrayed to the American people as Trump doing something untoward. He's kind of usurping power and going above and beyond what he is supposed to be doing. So it puts him in an interesting position then if he is prevented from doing the recess appointments through this pro forma process while supporting the people, making it impossible for him to make the recess appointments. This was John Thune announcing it over the weekend. If I can just find it. Perhaps. Here it is.
The Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent.
Can I have order, please?
May I ask unanimous consent that quorum call be suspended?
Without objection.
And I ask unanimous consent that when the Senate completes its business today, it adjourn to then convene for pro forma session only with no business being conducted on the following dates and times: Tuesday, August 5th at 1, Friday, August 8th at 1:05, Tuesday, August 12th at 8 a.m., Friday, August 15th at 10:15 a.m., Tuesday, August 19th at 10 a.m., Friday, August 22nd at 9 a.m., Tuesday, August 26th at 12 p.m. noon, and Friday, August 29th at 7 a.m. Further,
they got the same schedule that I have. So pro forma sessions through the recess so that Trump can't make recess appointments. Now, we can be very mad at that, but it doesn't seem that Trump is very mad about it. I just presented a possible, what I believe to be a possible explanation for that, but it's hard to say. So Trump continued to support right through the weekends. Here's just one more. A great job being done by Leader John Thune and Speaker Mike Johnson. Thank you both. The great big beautiful bill will go down as one of the most consequential pieces of legislation in the history of our country. MAGA. And is that true? Don't know. Hard to say at this point, but it could be true. It was celebrated and promoted in a way that made it seem like it would be true. But, it's the BBB, Build Back Better, big beautiful bill. Hopefully it's the inversion of that great reset agenda. And I don't think that we have even a worthwhile scope on what the intent of that big, beautiful bill is. I mean, We can speculate and have our theories. We can go through and read every bit of it and say, oh, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. I think there's probably something more foundational that is hidden from us that would actually explain the push for the BBB and this lofty language about it, or it's a rug. But let's keep going. This is some of the response on the quote-unquote MAGA right. The paid influencer sphere. This is Nick Sorter. John Thune just announced he will be blocking President Trump from making appointments after he recesses the Senate tonight via pro forma sessions. What a loser, McConnell 2.0. Okay, so there has been an obvious coordinated effort to go after John Thune over this, even though Trump was supporting him over the weekend. People, cunning influencers like this one, are claiming that this is all to block Donald Trump from doing this thing that must be done or that he wants to do. Doesn't seem like he wants to do it. Seems like he's put a situation in place where his hands are clean on it and it doesn't happen. And there's no controversy at any stage of the process. And we'll see if that's how it plays out. But the idea that these influencers are more faithful, conservatives, Republicans, MAGA, whatever they identify as, than Donald Trump himself is absolutely crazy in my mind. The goal of all this, as we said with the redistricting thing, isn't to make Republicans win fake elections. There is a bigger and more important goal to be achieved. So the premise here is that Republicans having all this power is the goal, hence the influencers being extremely upset. This is Axios updating this is from Sunday. Nuclear option lingers over Senate as members leave for August recess. Senate leaders failed to reach a bipartisan deal to speed through more of President Trump's nominees, so senators are heading home with a GOP promise of changing the rules when they return in September. Chuck Schumer refused to back down from his demands, and Trump ultimately gave Majority Leader John Thune cover to let his fatigued conference go home and reset. Yeah. It was just too exhausting being a senator. What are these people ever talking about? Senators will stay voting Saturday evening on a small list of nominees already primed for final confirmation. They will then head home for a month of fundraisers, town halls, and campaigning as they try to put some positive spin on the big, beautiful bill. And so the freak out now is about whether or not the Senate rules will be changed as a result of this process. I think that is a fairly interesting possibility. One more from Donald Trump on Truth Social, and we do have to wrap up soon. Democrats led by, darn it, that was, how did that get in the location again? We're going to skip that. That was what I already read. I'm very, very annoyed at myself. Damn, man. I had some Israel stuff that I wanted to get through today, and I just don't think that's possible. Can we? Let's see if I can get through all of these in 10 minutes. That is probably a failed mission waiting to happen. But we can try. There was an interesting article last week in the Financial Times. And here is that article. Has Gaza tested the limits of Donald Trump's support for Benjamin Netanyahu? In a few words, U.S. President Donald Trump this week suggested that one of Washington's closest allies, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, was lying. There was real starvation underway in Gaza, Trump told reporters in Scotland on Monday, a day after Netanyahu had called such reports a bold-faced lie. So now they have diverged. Trump said he had seen the images of hungry Palestinians on television, and on Tuesday declared that a person would have to be pretty cold-hearted or nuts not to find them terrible. It was a rare rebuke from a U.S. president who has placed few limitations on the behavior of Washington's biggest foreign aid beneficiary and whom Netanyahu has praised as the greatest friend Israel has ever had. But Trump's comments amid mounting international condemnation of Israel hinted at the existence of some unspoken limits to that relationship, say analysts and people close to the administration. Trump has given Netanyahu near carte blanche to use his country's powers as he sees fit in the aftermath of Hamas's October 7th, 2023 attack on Israel, also known as the paragliding go-kart incident. But the president's own ambitions for the region, combined with domestic political considerations and the competing influences of those around him, have created political flashpoints. A small but vocal contingent of his MAGA base, including younger Republicans and far-right podcasters, have grown skeptical of Washington's relationship with Israel. What is unique, strange, disgusting, What is this unique, strange, disgusting, perverse relationship that we seem to have with Israel? Candace Owens, a popular podcaster and frequent proponent of anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, said on her program last week. They also mention Marjorie Taylor Greene's comments and then say, "My people are starting to hate Israel." Trump recently warned one prominent Jewish donor, according to a Middle East expert who speaks regularly with the administration. So that makes it sound like that person didn't actually hear Trump say that. And someone supposedly in the administration told someone else that Trump said that. Is that true? Well, we can't possibly know. But on a story level, that is a major shift in public perception if the people are starting to hate Israel. And I would suggest that that is the point of this entire operation from the paragliding go-kart incident on. And again, I think that Netanyahu fits the our boy framing. Analysts caution against overstating the impacts of critics on the far right. Will there ever be a blow-up with Israel and Trump, said the expert who spoke on the condition of anonymity. I don't think so. But there are people in the White House who are watching this narrative develop in the right wing in the MAGA world that is very anti-Israel, very anti-Jewish. And there definitely is that info op happening. I don't know that the Trump administration is responsive to that. I tend to think that that is the enemy's own controlled opposition counter op pushing back and trying to make this a big thing to eventually sell Trump as Hitler, MAGA as the Nazis. And then there will be all of this informational support that has been relayed to the public that will allow people to take on that belief more easily. And I think that that's what this project is for. There was a blow up between Tucker Carlson. This all went viral. I mean, it's not blow up might be a dramatic way to say that. But Tucker talked about Nick Fuentes and said Nick Fuentes was a Fed. Nick Fuentes responded and then was like, what is Tucker talking about? Tucker is obviously a Fed. His father was a CIA propagandist. And I think that that is a very reasonable case to make, one that I've made on here plenty before. And then Tucker lied about when he found out that his dad was actually in the CIA. And it's provably lied. It's on multiple videos, him saying it not May of this year as he described, but at different points last year, and maybe even before that. There's no way he didn't know that. It's like not possible. And Fuentes' response, I think, nailed him pretty well on that stuff. I remember a couple of years ago, people got very, very angry at me for suggesting that Tucker and his new show on X, formerly Twitter, the free speech site, weren't the greatest thing imaginable. Now, I have no problem with Tucker Carlson. I like some episodes of his show. He is a decent interviewer depending on who he's interviewing and what the subject matter is. Okay. I don't like him all the time. But what I said at the time was it's clear he's not telling the truth about what he knows about certain things. And he does it pretty regularly. So you're basically going to either have to understand this guy's lying, or you're going to have to soothe yourself by saying it's just kayfabe. He's part of a white hat info op to wake up the normies slowly, and he's actually a really good guy. Maybe, but what we know to be true is that he's lying. Okay, so at that point, you have to really take a step back and be like, not everything this guy says is true. He's not always representing himself truthfully. He's not representing what he knows truthfully. And those are, that is, again, the same distinction that we are trying to draw that I described earlier. Which direction is he going? There has to be some objective standard there to compare that to, which all of the relativism and subjectivity in the world isn't going to rationally, properly reconcile. This is Ezra Klein of the New York Times interviewing a man named Yoram Hazony, who is, I don't know about a neocon, but very much a normie and very pro-Israel.
So I will never blame, I don't think I ever have, and I don't think I will, blame a political leader because once he sat with somebody. The reality of Nick Fuentes is, okay, and I'm sorry that your listeners need to be made familiar with Nick Fuentes, because I don't think there's much bigger fish that would.
And just for reference, he's talking about when Fuentes showed up at that dinner at Mar-a-Lago with Kanye West and Milo Yiannopoulos. So an info op there as well.
We have to fry in this conversation if we want to. Nick Fuentes, a young Holocaust revisionist, kind of Catholic, really made himself famous on the web for his incessant attacks on Jews. And is he comfortable with the Trump administration? No, he's not comfortable with the Trump administration. So there's all sorts of weird things on the American political right. They are getting stronger. I don't want to pretend, oh no, they're totally irrelevant. We shouldn't be worried about them. That's not true at all. They're getting much stronger.
Very interesting. But there's an extended version of that clip where he talks about the overstating of this problem and then also defends, in some sense, at least a little bit, MAGA against Ezra Klein, framing everything MAGA does and all the opinions in the exact way that the Uniparty left media propagates constantly. And Yoram Hazony actually was like, I don't think that's actually true. And so part of that was really great. Take this as you will. And again, I consider the perspective that we're talking about here, I think that's important. The interview was responded to in strange ways online. It was framed by this man, and I'm not familiar with this guy, but in his Twitter profile, it says he is a Western civilization enjoyer, based anti-communist liberalism, survived CCP kidnap plot, free Tibet, and he's got 172 roughly 1,000 followers on X, formerly Twitter. And then he has various flags here. I think that's Australia, the United States of America, the Ukraine flag, and is that Malaysia or something, or Tibet? I don't know. But anyhow, so very liberal guy. Yes, based anti-communist liberalism. That's how he frames himself. He's not a commie. He's just a super based Uniparty left moderate. This discussion between Ezra Klein and Yoram Hazony is the best intellectual discussion I've ever seen between a liberal thinker and a MAGA thinker. Kudos to Ezra Klein for being willing to have conversations like this. On migration, I would say I'm in the middle between Ezra and Hazony, and then he goes into his other opinions about this. I don't care about this guy's opinions, but I do care about him identifying Yoram Hazony as MAGA, Make America Great Again. Is he MAGA? Doesn't seem like. I hope that he's on our side. I know he goes on War Room fairly consistently. And there may well be a good twin project in Israel that's happening. And the support there might be seen in a different way than what we're seeing generally from regime Israel. Got to leave open the possibility, but it seems unlikely. Let me see if I can get through. Let's do 3 more real quick, and then we'll be out of here. So this is Sky News from Saturday. Hamas says it will not disarm unless an independent Palestinian state is established, as Israeli fire kills 18 in Gaza. The militant group said it was issuing a statement in response to media reports quoting U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff, claiming Hamas has shown willingness to disarm. It continued, "We reaffirm that resistance and its arms are a legitimate national and legal right as long as the occupation continues. This right is recognized by international laws and norms, and it cannot be relinquished except through the full restoration of our national rights. First and foremost, the establishment of an independent, fully sovereign Palestinian state with Jerusalem as its capital." That's a big demand. The Jerusalem as a capital thing, I think, is a big demand. I don't know if that's how it's going to go down. Maybe. Maybe there is a one-state solution and there's just no Israel anymore. It's existed for 80 years. It doesn't have to exist. It's not biblical Israel. It's just lines drawn on a map, same as Ukraine, same as South Korea, same as Guyana. Okay? Doesn't have to matter that way. Okay? It's just a word that they use to make Christians support what they're doing, having a global regime proxy state and ollie oxen free for the world's corrupt, compromised, perverts, etc. Okay? And a major influence in U.S. politics, a facilitator of that influence. All right? It might not only be that, but it is definitely that. And so if that goes away, okay. A lot of these negotiations happened back in 2020, and now we're seeing them come back around. It has always been inevitable that there's going to be a recognized Palestinian state. We are moving in that direction because of everything that has happened since the paragliding go-kart incident. And other countries around the world have been announcing, in Europe in particular, allied nations, quote unquote, have been announcing that they intend in the near future to recognize a Palestinian state. Something like 145 countries around the world already recognize a Palestinian state. So that is already a done deal. And we're being told that the leverage to get that deal is something that will take place in the future. This is Hamas's leverage to achieve that negotiation. Even this is a cover story over a reality that we are not able to get full access to. So we have story devices to serve as explainers to tell us what the new normal, what this new reality is going to be like. There is no way that they are hinging a two-state solution on Hamas disarming. Okay? It's silly to even consider. Now, Grace from the War Room, we'll wrap this up. No, let's go here first, and then we'll wrap it up. This is from just this afternoon. Netanyahu, this is CNN, Netanyahu to urge full conquest of Gaza as ceasefire talks reach an impasse. So now the ceasefire is not happening. Israel's going to go to war. All the pro-Israel people cheer for war. Hamas said they weren't going to disarm unless certain conditions were met. So that side cheers as well. And while that back and forth happens again and again through cycle after cycle of reruns, the thing that is already set in stone, the new way that it will be, is just continuing to be implemented this whole time. Negotiations on a hostage and ceasefire deal in Gaza appear to be at an impasse, with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu leaning toward expanded military operations and Hamas demanding the humanitarian situation be addressed before it returns to talks. Netanyahu will urge a meeting of the security cabinet to support the full conquest of the Strip, according to reports in Israeli media that were described as accurate by a source familiar with the matter. Israel's Ynet cited senior officials close to Netanyahu as saying the die is cast, we're going for full conquest. If the chief of staff doesn't agree, he should resign. Is that what's happening? That's the question. Have we seen things like that here? Have we seen people close to the administration talking about additional efforts for Ukraine, for instance? And we have seen actually some of that in the last couple of weeks. These stories are just being perpetuated, though. And throughout the perpetuation of this story, the regime element in both situations continues to look worse. Okay? So if you understand it only on a narrative level, and we are trying to have our perceptions adjusted and maintain the regime's control over the system, that doesn't seem to be happening. Because what the result is that fewer and fewer people are supporting Ukraine over time. Fewer and fewer people are supporting Israel over time. And we're going to see similar stories in the future, it seems like, with Taiwan and China, North Korea, South Korea, Venezuela, Guyana. Okay? There's a bunch of these examples. And I think that we're going to see that pattern continue, this back and forth about, are we going to disarm? Are we going to have a ceasefire? Are we not? Every cycle of that just spins the machine back up. And the result is that the regime interest is less supported than it was before. So whatever info op they are running, it is failing. It's broken. And the information is shifting drastically against them. Then if you consider that the AI is going to be taking that information in as well, you can see their systems being turned around and targeted back at them. This is Grace Chong on X, formerly Twitter. She's part of Steve Bannon's staff at the War Room. This is Bannon on, let's see what date was. Okay, this is Sunday. He said, responding to an article in Unheard, it says, Israel is losing the U.S. front. The Jewish state faces a generational vice grip. From the article, Bannon posted this. Green is far from alone on the right. Steve Bannon, the former Trump political consigliere and one of the most popular right-wing podcast hosts in America, recently argued Netanyahu's government is out of control. On Bannon's show, former Blackwater CEO Eric Prince accused the Israeli military of intentionally targeting a Catholic church in Gaza and declared, the time of subsidizing the IDF as the American taxpayer must end. Bannon himself put it best when he told Politico this week, it seems that for the under 30-year-old MAGA base, Israel has almost no support. Bannon further believes it's not just young MAGA, but that Netanyahu's attempt to save himself politically by dragging America in deeper to another Middle East war has turned off a large swath of older MAGA diehards. It's precisely the Israeli hardliners' awareness of this generational problem that impels them to act in a maximalist fashion in Gaza and beyond. Better to strike big now, the thinking goes, before the generational turnover empowers Israel skeptics on both sides. So Bannon hints at the dynamic I just described and an escalation of that dynamic. And again, chimping out every time the cycle comes around to that point is the right response, but doing it in a non-emotional, totally rational way where we understand what's going on, but express the sentiment against that. Because the insane anger doesn't work. That's not what's driving this public perceptive change, which is a change that needs to happen. It's the story doing that. All right. It's not these guys in their angry, like pro-Nazi responses, which is clearly an info op, no matter how you feel about the mainstream World War II history. Okay. There's definitely that info op happening online, and those aren't the good guys, right? It is clear that the regime needs that op to happen so that they can cement their re-identification of Trump as Hitler and MAGA as Nazis, okay? And it doesn't matter again, about the World War II history. What matters is how that story has been used. And that story, if it repeats, will be used in the same way to the same effect over time, unless people reinforce what's true in these situations, which I think has to be the ultimate goal. And again, all of these things have these different interpretations. And it is for us to decide through our discernment which direction this is going and resist properly, speak out against, get involved locally, as I said at the beginning, against the regime's implementation of their agenda. At the same time, we have to not throw the baby out with the bathwater, to use a cliche, okay? That there are bad things potentially happening in the future is not a reason to believe that the project has failed or that Trump is actually on the enemy side, etc. It all comes down to the taste test. I'm going to do one ad, and then I'm going to get to rants and check the chat, and then we will wrap it all up. I have not done this one before. Let's give it a go. Oh, man. Maybe it's not going to let me do it. And that would be a little annoying. But I think we'll get there. I think we can get there. Let me try one more time. Here we go. Quick pause to tell you about Pickaxe, the creator and user-first platform built for people, not algorithms. You know what big tech is up to: data mining, bot-driven feeds, black box AI deciding who sees your work. Instead, Pickaxe hands you an algorithm-free chronological feed with native Rumble playback, auto-publishing of your live streams, free blue check verification, and full monetization control. Your voice, your rules. Best of all, the web version is live right now, and their iOS, Android apps drop next month. On Pickaxe, your Rumble videos play seamlessly right in your feed as if they were built into the platform. No embeds, no workarounds, just smooth native playback. Even better, in beta now, creators can connect their Rumble channel to Pickaxe to automatically post live streams and videos so your followers never miss a moment. You can also write full articles directly on Pickaxe today. And later this year, you'll be able to blast them out as email newsletters with one click and build up your own email list for direct audience access. Monetize on your terms through paywalls, revenue sharing, or affiliate ads that auto-insert promo codes and tracking links. And because bots shouldn't steal your spotlight, Pickaxe hands you a free blue check so everyone knows it's really you. Pickaxe is building tech that builds up humanity. Algorithm-free, noise-free, human-first. Head to pickaxe.com, sign up, and take your platform to the next level. Real voices deserve a real home. And that'll be interesting. I'm going to have to look into that and see what its functionality is like and see what its purpose is and see how well it develops. But it sounds like a direct competitor to Substack, if you ask me. And Rumble and Substack have both been good for all these years. So it's not that I have a dog in that fight. They both are platforms that I've found a lot of value in. So we will see how that goes. But that is an interesting new step for Rumble, particularly when you see them, particularly when you understand that they are introducing payment elements into their ecosystem. This would add another layer onto that, the Bitcoin Tether wallet. They're talking about Rumble Wallet. They have Rumble Cloud. There are a lot of things coming together. Truth Social definitely involved too. So that is an interesting media project, well worth keeping an eye on, in addition to it being an ad. All right, one more Rumble rant in the chat, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, I missed this one. From Custard One, g'day, Chris. Listening out here in Perth, Western Australia. Love your work. Thank you very much, Custard. I am very happy every time I hear that people from around the world are listening. I love that. So thank you. And then Beth said for $5, did you ever meet Milo or Ye? Talking about Kanye West and Milo Yiannopoulos. I did meet Milo. In fact, I talked to Milo extensively a couple times in 2016. I used to host a podcast back then when I was still liberal and had Milo on as a guest. So I did an interview with him back then. Maybe one day I'll put it out. I don't know. We had a lot of points of disagreement, and then I just thought Trump was a bad guy. Kanye West, I've never met. I have thrown events where Kanye West performed, but I have never met Kanye West. So that is the answer to that question. And with that, I will go ahead and wrap things up until Friday. I cannot believe how long this episode was. And I apologize for that. But also, it's been 6 days. I want to catch up on a bunch of these things. I think it's important to discuss these things. We didn't even get to all the stuff I had. Maybe I'm just too verbose these days. But I will be back on Friday for a subscriber stream at the same reasonable time on the same reasonable podcast network. I don't have a network. Masks and lockdowns don't work. They lied to you about a pandemic. And Joe Biden was never president.
Well,
what?
You know who I am, don't you?
Well, you ain't Fiona Apple, and if you ain't Fiona Apple, I don't give a rat's ass.
What's wrong with being an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times? What do you think, Max?
Do you want to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times?
Yeah, I think I'd like to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times.
It's not true. It's more true than I would perhaps prefer.
Can we stop this cruel game and allow the boy to keep one shred of dignity? For God's sakes! I can't stand to see him in all this pain! You vicious bastards! Let him move in with you! Is it so bad to see somebody happy? So just let him move in! For the love of God, let the boy move in with you! Good Lord!
And I will not let you down.
We do a little trolling. It's called We Do a Little Trolling.
What? In my mind, that's the end game.
If you're listening for free and would like to support the show, the best way to do that is by signing up for a paid subscription at imyourmoderator.substack.com. You can find the info stream over on Telegram at t.me/veryreasonable. The merch site is cancelcouture.com, and for all my other links, you can visit linktree.com/imyourmoderator. And I'll see you soon. Down on the range.